Lord of Mystery. The Return of the Stars chapter 361 to 380. Asta looked at the decent-looking puppet master again. I'll give you a choice. Will you die first or will your puppet die first? Let me die first. The man's eyes flashed with painful struggle, and his voice was hoarse, not normal, and sounded more like he was poisoned. Tell me the story of you and this puppet, satisfy my curiosity, and I will fulfill your wish. Story? Haha. It's really a good story. The man's eyes were full of sarcasm. He glanced at the Witch of Joy tied to the ground, and after a moment of silence, he began to slowly tell his story. His real name is Roger Dorling. He became a fortune teller at the age of 18 and was promoted to a Sequence 7 magician at the age of 25. He is also a member of the Mechanical Heart of the Church of Steam and Machinery, and his future is bright. It was at this age that he met Miss Emma. At the first sight, he determined that this person was the life partner he had always wanted to spend his life with. After his hard pursuit, he finally entered the palace of marriage with her as he wished. A few years later, they gave birth to a lovely son. Everything was so beautiful, but beauty was meant to be destroyed. His wife hid herself so well that he didn't even notice that she was an extraordinary person and a member of the witch sect. When she was promoted to the Pleasure Witch, he was on a mission outside for a long time, and she couldn't control her desire for pleasure. Perhaps she had never restrained this desire. Her decadent private life and her infidelity to feelings made Roger feel betrayed. After persuading her to no avail, he made her into a secret doll after he was promoted to the Master of Secret Dolls. The only secret doll belonged to him alone. After that, he also left the steam and mechanical church and became a wild, extraordinary person, starting his wandering life. This time, he was found by the confidant of Grand Duke Nanwell. In the face of a huge reward, he took on tonight's mission. Assassins are the initial sequence of the witch path. In his opinion, the extraordinary people of the witch path do not need to kill their opponents through the means of charm and pleasure. Assassins only need to be proficient in assassination. Unfortunately, he misjudged his opponent tonight. Not only was the puppet captured in an instant, but he himself was also captured. After listening to his story, Hasta raised his eyebrows slightly and snorted. Turning his once loving wife into a puppet was really a morbid possessiveness. Can my body be buried with her? After struggling painfully, Roger Dorling still made this last request with a loving look. Just as Hasta was about to agree to this request, the puppet of the Pleasure Witch, which was originally tied by the chain of stars, actually trembled slightly. Is this happiness? Do they have such a loving relationship between husband and wife? Hasta was slightly stunned, thought about it, and used the extraordinary ability of the night path to enter the memory of the Pleasure Witch. Here, he saw a slightly different version of the story. This Miss Emma is indeed a member of the witch cult, and she was already a Sequence 7 witch before marrying Roger. She didn't like Roger from the beginning, but she couldn't resist his step-by-step pressure and threats, so she finally married Roger. Roger knew that she was a witch of the witch cult long before they got married, and he even used this to threaten her with reporting the church to force her to submit. After marriage, as a member of the Mechanical Heart, Roger often went out on missions and did not go home for years. As a member of the witch cult and a successful Sequence 6 pleasure witch, it was naturally impossible for her to remain chaste for Roger. Pleasure in bed is the best antidote for witches to avoid madness. Later, Roger returned from the mission. Because he was too anxious to be promoted to Sequence 5 puppet master, his emotions were unstable, sometimes crazy, sometimes irritable. When Roger saw her lying on someone else's bed, his suppressed emotions broke out. She was no match for him, so Roger cruelly made her into a puppet and forced her to stay by his side, being driven like a slave at all times. In Emma's memory, it was also mentioned that the child between her and Roger was actually a baby girl. But Emma followed the tradition of the witch sect and sent the baby girl away to find someone else to raise her, and stole a baby boy back to give to Roger as his son. Asta, who had satisfied his desire to eat melons, left the memory of the happy witch and looked at Roger with a look full of ridicule. What did you see in her memory? Roger was anxious and his voice was much louder. Aren't you a fortune teller? Didn't you tell your fortune carefully? Asta was too lazy to listen to his answer, so he asked the yellow monks to take him down and deal with him. He also completed the achievement of fortune-telling tonight. As for this witch puppet, Asta also asked the yellow monks to deal with it, and the whole room instantly became much quieter. Tonight, in addition to obtaining a sequence 4 extraordinary characteristics of the fallen Earl and the secret puppet master, he also got 3 extraordinary items. One of them came from the fallen Earl, and the other 2 came from Master Luo. This puppet master is called Roger Doran, and it's okay to call him Master Luo. After Hasta figured out the abilities and negative effects of the 3 extraordinary items, he only kept the extraordinary item that came from the same path as himself. This is a black ring with red lines. At the top of the ring, there is a black rose blooming, called the Rose Oath. It has 3 extraordinary functions. The first bud is ready to bloom, and a huge black rose blooms in an instant, which can wrap enemies who cannot dodge in the rose petals. A series of negative effects such as chaos, distortion, and corruption will swallow the enemy in an instant. The second perception increase, it can effectively enhance the wearer's perception ability with about a quarter increase. The third is to make a vow. The wearer can choose a person and make a vow with him based on certain rules. The specific content of the vow can be drawn up by himself. Rose Oath has 2 negative effects. Flowers have thorns. Every time you use the ability of Rose Oath, thorns that are small enough to pierce the skin of your finger will grow inside the ring. Every time you use it again, the dense thorns will become longer and penetrate deeper inside the flesh and blood of your fingers. If used without restraint, the entire finger will be completely penetrated, and this penetration will also be accompanied by corrosive infection, making the wound difficult to heal. Destruction of oaths. Oaths, contracts, and agreements exist only to be broken. When you make an oath, you will always be tempted to break the oath. Once you break the oath, you will be punished for breaking the rules. It's probably like putting several layers of debuffs on you, such as feeling exhausted and weak, being inexplicably plagued by bad luck, being struck by lightning while walking on the road, mutating in various parts of the body, etc. Although the negative effects are a bit severe, the effects are equally effective, and they are easy to wear and easy to activate at critical moments. The only inconvenient thing is that the Oath of the Rose is easily recognized when worn on the finger. This fallen Earl is most likely from Backland. There should be no such extraordinary and powerful person around the Archduke of Southwell. After all, it is not that simple to want a demigod to serve you. The next day, just after dawn, the Archduke of Southwell, who had been waiting all night, sent someone to investigate Hasta's situation. When the people sent there saw Hasta walking out of the room safely and leisurely enjoying a cup of hot tea in the morning. After receiving the news, the Archduke of Southwell angrily pushed the books on the desk to the ground in his study. As for the 2 losers who had sworn to get things done, they realized that the situation was not good and wanted to escape. He had already sent people to chop them into pieces and throw them into the sea to feed the fish. He didn't care about the life or death of these 2 people. What he cared about was the people he sent out secretly. That man was his father, specially sent to protect him to prevent him from suddenly and inexplicably dying. Now, that person disappeared all night and did not come back, and no news was sent back. Basically, the situation is very ominous. "Oh, Earl Campbell, you are so capable," Archduke Southwell whispered bitterly, with a flash of determination in his eyes. He came to the desk, took out a pen and paper, and began to write a letter, preparing to send it back to Backland to explain the matter. Before he finished writing the letter, Hasta sent someone to bring him a message. "Thank you to the Grand Duke for your warm hospitality last night and allowing me to spend a wonderful night. I also hope that the Grand Duke will be happy every night in the future. Have a good sleep." The Archduke of Southwell was so angry that his teeth almost broke, but he still sent someone to reply to Hasta. There is still a long road ahead in life. I hope Earl Campbell will have a smooth journey, no illness or pain, and no unknown bad luck. When he received the good wishes from the Archduke of Southwell, Hasta had already purchased some gifts in a store near the street. "After all, I had to go out and bring something back with me, otherwise Azishara's little guy would start meowing again." After returning to Port Poonen, Hasta gave Keys full responsibility for handling the Archduke of Southwell. He only gave Keys a word. When he returned from Backland, he hoped that the situation in South Wales would be calm. After spending 2 days and arranging some things, Hasta took Sharon, Azishara, and Lady Lisa back to Backland. He also invited Miss Audrey's second brother by the way. He originally thought Alfred would refuse, but he didn't expect that he would also return to Backland this time. It was said that Earl Hall was planning to arrange a marriage for him in Backland. Out of curiosity, Hasta specifically asked Alfred's age. At the age of 26, a man is in his prime youth. Hasta was thinking about another issue. Audrey had just turned 18 during the Chinese New Year last year, which meant there was an 8-year age difference between the two. This age difference. Count Hall is really getting stronger with age. Backland, Earl Hall's home. Today is a good day. Earl Hall, who has always been diligent in government affairs, rarely takes a day off. He got up early in the morning and asked the kitchen manager to go out to buy some fresh ingredients and asked the chef to prepare some delicious dishes. Audrey was a little strange at first, but soon she learned from Countess Hall that her second brother came back from South Wales with Mr. Hasta. As for her second brother, she hasn't seen him for several years, and she only had contact in letters in the past. Susie, who followed Audrey and silently watched everything around her, also wagged her tail happily. It also had an extra meal today. At about 3:20 in the afternoon, Audrey led Susie and followed her eldest brother Hibbert to the steam train station to pick up people. After waiting for nearly half an hour, the steam train from South Wales stopped steadily on the platform. Soon, Audrey, who was waiting in the carriage outside, saw the figures of her second brother and Mr. Hasta. "Long time no see, my brother." Hibbert went forward eagerly to hug Alfred, his face full of joyful smile. Audrey stood by, took a look at the scene of deep brotherly love in front of her, and looked at Mr. Hasta, who was holding a small black cat. The corners of her mouth slightly raised. She couldn't help but think of the unusual behavior that Mr. Hasta had made the night before he left Backland last time. Meow. Azishara, lying in Hasta's arms, looked down from above, lowered her noble eyes, and glanced at Susie, who was following Audrey without leaving a trace. "Is this the dog Fiefin who likes to read books? The golden hair looks very vulgar, not as beautiful and elegant as my shiny black hair. It also needs me to follow the owner, unlike me who can be held in the arms of the owner intimately, without even needing to walk. In any way, I am much better than it." Azishara raised her head slightly with pride, retracted her gaze from Susie, and continued to show a lazy look, curling up in Hasta's arms. Hibbert and Alfred talked about the past for a while, then greeted Hasta warmly, and Audrey also chatted with her second brother for a while. After a brief chat, Hibbert and Audrey invited Hasta to go to their home to enjoy dinner together. Hasta just smiled and refused such an invitation. The protagonist of Earl Hall's house today was Alfred, and he would not come at this time. He would visit again when he had time in the future. He parted ways with Audrey and others halfway, and when he returned to his home, Butler Neil had already arranged everything. This time he did not inform Butler Neil when he came back. He should have heard from Earl Hall's family that he would be back soon. He lay in his big bathtub and took a comfortable bath to wash away the dust on the way. If he did not want to come back to Backland openly, he would not choose a steam train, which is an extremely slow means of transportation. Borrowing the road directly from the spirit world is many times faster. In order to make it easier to travel in the future, Hasta has decided to make a rule related to the apprenticeship path for the star chain after being promoted to Sequence 5 Chaos Mentor. Sequence 5 himself just corresponds to the apprenticeship path traveler, and in the future, he only needs to pull a space door to travel. After enjoying the feast prepared by Butler Neil in the restaurant on the first floor, Hasta sat on the sofa in the lobby on the first floor and listened to Butler Neil's report on what happened during this period. After understanding, he went to the study on the second floor to read the relevant financial reports and future development plans of the factory and law firm. Because it has only been about a month since the last time he came back, there are not many things piled up. At about 8 o'clock in the evening, Hasta left Ashera at home and went out in a carriage. He did not go directly to the Brave Bar to find Sharon and Marriage, but went to the new residence of Furs and Zio. The address of this residence was told to him by Audrey today. George III wanted to be promoted to the Black Emperor. Because Adam helped to cover it up, Bernadette should not be able to detect this with her ability. He needs to discuss this matter with Bernadette. As for the reason, all this is the will of the stars. When Austin knocked on the door of the big house, there seemed to be a sound of something breaking inside, and then there was the sound of Hugh's complaints. After a while, Hugh carefully asked through the door, and when she learned that it was Asta who was visiting, she slowly opened the door. What happened just now? Asta walked into the house and asked casually. Hugh snorted and glanced at Furs, who was cleaning the floor. It's because someone's psychological endurance is too poor. He was startled when he heard the knock on the door, and even the coffee in his hand spilled all over the floor. Hugh, you are so embarrassed to say that to me, weren't you also startled? But I didn't spill the coffee. That's because you didn't have coffee in your hand at that time. Cough, cough, cough. Seeing that Furs's voice was getting louder, Hugh coughed twice, indicating that there were other people in Furs's house. Furs's face suddenly turned red, and he hurriedly cleaned up the residue on the floor, and put the garbage into the trash can in the kitchen. Zio glanced at the coffee-soaked floor. Fortunately, there was no expensive carpet there. He breathed a sigh of relief. After inviting Hasta to sit down, Furs had already made 2 cups of hot tea. He handed 1 cup to Hasta and enjoyed one by himself. Seeing that Zio was about to say something, Forsy spoke first. I can only take 2 cups at a time. If you want to drink tea, go to the kitchen by yourself. Zio rolled his eyes, got up and went to the kitchen to get a cup of hot tea, deliberately sitting next to Asta and opposite Forsy. It seems that you guys have been living a relatively stable life recently. Asta saw the 2 people's little moves in his eyes, and said with a chuckle. Not good. It's not stable at all. Zio and Forsy each exchanged a sentence. Finally, Forsy smiled and motioned for Zio to tell about their life during this period. Zio took a sip of hot tea, the smoke rose, and she took a breath before telling about her life with Forsy during this period. Since the last time Forsy was contaminated, they moved to this place under the care of Miss Audrey, and then met a woman who called herself a sage. During this period, the sage sent Shu out to investigate the news, asking Forsy to go out more often when she was fine, to be a competent bait, and not to stay in the house all day. Not to mention, Forsy is still very qualified as a bait. Within a month, she encountered 3 waves of people who wanted to attack her. Although they all survived in the end, it also left a shadow in Forsy's heart. Fortunately for Zio, she had long been accustomed to the life of running around outside, and finding information was an old trade she was good at. Thanks to the care and feeding of the sage, Zio and Forsy are now sequence 7 Beyonders. In the words of the sage, they can finally be of some use. But these are not the real dilemmas of Forsy and Zio. The trivial daily life of not being able to make ends meet is their biggest enemy. If Forsy hadn't sold the news about the God of War's fall for a sky-high price of 2,500 gold pounds last time, the 2 of them would have spent all their savings. Forsy said with emotion. Living in such a good house, daily consumption far exceeds the previous expenses. I always feel that buying 2 cheap things is polluting this big house. Yeah, buying clothes and food, we can't go back to the poor days. Zio also felt sad. Asta understands this feeling very well. At this time, due to changes in living environment, consumption concepts have changed. Living in a big house, you can naturally continue to eat vegetables and live a miserable life, but as long as you still have money in your pocket, you will gradually improve your consumption habits until it is worthy of the value of this big house. Consumption level. Hasta smiled and said, I also have a high reward mission here, which can help you solve your financial problems. Zio shook his head and refused. Mr. Hasta, it's not that we don't want to help, we don't have free time at the moment. Yes, our time already belongs to the sage, Forsy also agreed. I'm here tonight. In addition to visiting you, I also want to discuss matters with your sage. Mr. Hasta knows the sage? Hasta is also a believer in the stars? Facing the different questions from Zio and Forsy, Hasta just nodded calmly and said, not bad. Zio and Forsy looked at each other. Although they were a little shocked, they were not too surprised. It was Hasta who helped Forsy become a believer in the stars in the first place, so the possibility that he himself is a believer in the stars is naturally very high. So tonight is the meeting of the star believers? Zio and Forsy's eyes lit up at the same time. The sage was too high and unattainable, so they didn't feel much like they were fellow believers of the stars. But Hasta is different, very realistic. A meeting of the star believers? A green and crisp pea vine appeared inside the house accompanied by a sound. The iconic pea vine and familiar voice proved that the visitor was Bernadette. Hasta looked relaxed and still sat firmly on the sofa, while Zio and Forsy stood up subconsciously. Don't be so restrained. Seeing the discomfort of Zio and Furs, Bernadette did not choose to sit on the sofa, but sat on a flat high stool formed by the pea vines. The slightly farther distance made Zio and Furs feel relieved. There was no way. The aura of this wise lady was too strong. They were always inevitably afraid of her. Zio and Furs sat down again, looking at Asta, indicating that he should speak, and Bernadette also looked at him. We are all believers of the stars, but we have never been really open and honest. Tonight is a meeting of believers of the stars. Asta paused, glanced at them, and continued. Tonight's topic is how to prevent George III from being promoted to Sequence 0 Black Emperor. Zio and Furs, who had just sat down and whose butts were not warm yet, were frightened and stood up again, their eyes full of panic and shock. Zio looked at Asta with the eyes of a madman, and said stutteringly, Mr. Asta, do you know what you are talking about? That's the king of the kingdom of Loan? Yes, Mr. Asta, that's not something we can participate in, right? Furs didn't know what the Black Emperor was, but she knew clearly what Sequence 0 represented. It was a god, a true god as noble as the 7 gods today. Just these few people wanted to shake George III to advance to Sequence 0, which was simply wishful thinking. Not to mention how many powerful extraordinary people there were in the royal family of the Kingdom of Loan. George III, who wanted to advance to Sequence 0, must be a Sequence 1. Or a powerful existence comparable to the King of Angels. Asta's eyes only looked at Bernadette, who frowned slightly. No wonder I always have a strange feeling when I stay in Backland recently. Bernadette quickly returned to an indifferent expression. Is this the will of the stars? Yes, the stars will not allow George III to successfully advance. Asta answered very affirmatively. I am willing to contribute to this. Bernadette directly agreed to this matter. She knew that her father had jumped to the Black Emperor path at the last moment of his life. Although he failed in the end, he still left the last mausoleum undiscovered, and this was her father's last ray of hope. If George III succeeded in becoming the Black Emperor, then her father would also fall completely and would never have the chance to revive again. In public and private, she would never sit back and watch this happen. How dare you? Zio really wanted to say this directly, but when the words came to her lips, she changed her tone slightly. I'm afraid that we can't complete this operation with just a few of us. More than just a few of us. Asta smiled and glanced at the frightened Zio and Furs. There are more than 4 of us believers in the stars, and we are not the only ones who don't want to see George III successfully promoted. Zio and Furs breathed a sigh of relief, but Asta's next words made them feel relieved again. They have their tasks, and we have things we should do. Zio and Furs looked at each other and decided to keep silent. Anyway, the 2 of them were arranged in the end, so as to participate in the discussion of this important matter? They didn't even have a specific concept of the enemy, let alone how to make suggestions. It was like a group of big guys were discussing how to overthrow a new world, but there were 2 little people sitting next to them who were still worrying about whether they would have bread to eat tomorrow. What's your plan? Bernadette asked directly, not doubting at all whether Hasta had the ability to stir up the storm in Backland. George III has been preparing for this for a long time. It's difficult to destroy it from the front. My suggestion is to destroy the 9 mausoleums he left in Backland at the moment of his promotion. We don't need to destroy all the mausoleums, we only need to destroy 2 or 3 to disrupt his promotion and let him fall because of his failed promotion. There are many extraordinary strong men in the royal family, but there are definitely not many who can reach Sequence 1 and Sequence 2. They need to guard each mausoleum separately, which gives us the opportunity to defeat them one by one. Asta briefly explained his plan. In fact, there is a simpler way, which is to use the curse to increase the probability of George III's promotion failure. With the authority of the Hall of Stars, plus Will, the Mercury Snake, if he could also pull Ouroboros into his camp. The power of fate alone would be enough to reduce George III's chances of promotion to a very low level. But it's not very safe after all, it's safer to destroy his mausoleum. Let Bernadette play a role by the way. Can you find the time of George III's promotion and the location of his mausoleum? Bernadette has already approved this plan, but she is still a little worried. The day he gives a speech to the whole kingdom is the day of his promotion. As for the location of the mausoleum, I do know a few. Why do you know so many secrets? The stars are always guiding me forward. Asta said, looking up at the ceiling. Bernadette didn't question anything and agreed to Asta's plan. The brief exchange between the 2 made Zio and Furs dumbfounded. Is it so easy? The other party is the king of Loan Kingdom who is about to be promoted to Sequence 0 Black Emperor. In just a few words, you arranged his end? But they didn't think the conversation between Hasta and the wise man was a joke. In the end, I can only doubt myself deeply if I am too incompetent. After finishing the discussion about George III, Hasta looked at Zio and Furs who were in a daze. Do you think it's incredible? Zio and Furs nodded together. In the extraordinary world, many things are like this. They look complicated, but in fact, they can be explained in just a few words. Zio and Furs shook their heads at the same time. No, they don't know at all, and they don't understand very well. What 9 mausoleums, what speeches to the whole country. Besides, do you really think they are stupid? Can it be so simple to prevent George III from being promoted to Sequence 0 Black Emperor? This is a bombshell in the entire extraordinary world, right? You are exploring too much for no good. Bernadette just said a few words, and extinguished all kinds of small thoughts in Zio and Furs's hearts, and they dared not think about it anymore. Bernadette looked at Hasta again. When did you become a believer of the stars? Zio and Furs were also interested in this question. I became a believer of the stars earlier than all of you. Asta didn't mind revealing a little information. Bernadette narrowed her eyes slightly. Then you were playing dumb in the previous few meetings. Well, people's hearts are hidden. I always need to observe for a while before I can feel at ease. Hey. Bernadette chuckled lightly, but didn't continue to ask. Zio and Furs were very curious, and pestered Asta to ask many questions. For simple questions, Asta didn't mind revealing a little to them, and when it came to key issues, he pulled out the banner of the stars. What kind of existence are the stars? The person who asked this question was Zio, and she also held it back for a long time before she dared to ask a question at this time. Asta smiled and didn't answer. Bernadette looked up, as if through the ceiling, seeing the sky full of bright stars. The stars, he is a god who is watching everything. Furs asked in a low voice, are the stars looking here now? What do you think? Bernadette just gave her a look of her own thinking. Furs shuddered slightly, not daring to talk nonsense anymore. The stars have always protected every believer of his. I was saved because of the existence of the stars. Asta said this with great emotion. Furs also resonated. My misfortune was also changed after I met the stars, and he also saved me. Shu also wanted to say something, but she didn't know what to say for a moment, so she could only sit in silence. The atmosphere seemed to be quiet all of a sudden. Bernadette glanced at them and said, have a good rest tonight, and then she disappeared like a handful of bubbles. Shu and Furs showed a look of relief on their faces, and saw Asta looking at them with a smile. We are just not used to talking to the sage so closely. Yes, the sage looks more like a queen, with a nobleness and elegance that cannot be looked at directly. Shu and Furs explained each other. If she was not afraid of blaspheming the sage, Furs would have wanted to use her imagination and say, the sage looks like a princess on the run. At Backland's steam train station, as the steam train whistled, another steam train from South Wales arrived at the station. As the doors opened, passengers who had been sitting on the steam train for a long time rushed out of the carriage, and Klein was one of them. Setting foot on Backland's land again, his face showed the same trance and excitement of returning home as other passengers. In order not to be discovered by Backland's acquaintances, Klein had used the faceless man's extraordinary ability to give himself a new identity and appearance. He was a tall and thin man with a slightly sickly pale face and a thin body, as if a gust of wind could blow him away. His new identity was a sick young man who returned to Backland from the seaside to recuperate. This was to differentiate himself from Gehrman on the sea. After leaving the station, Klein naturally stopped a carriage at the station gate and spent 1 solly and 2 pence to go to the Southbridge district. The price was a little expensive, but Klein wasn't short of money right now, and although the other party treated him as a foreigner, they didn't charge him too much, so he didn't bargain. He opened the curtain, held a golden pocket watch in his right hand and gently stroked it, looking at the street flashing outside the car window, feeling inexplicably heavy and depressed. If he hadn't pretended to be dead and changed his identity, he could now go home openly to reunite with Benson and Melissa, and he could also ask Leonard out for a drink and chat. But there weren't so many ifs. When he decided to fake his death, he had already anticipated that his future life would be a journey alone. I have to go back and see them anyway. If I don't see them in person, I'll always feel relieved. Klein sighed in his heart and decided to rent a house on a street not far from the house he originally rented. He didn't choose a long-term lease, but a short-term monthly lease, for which he paid a little extra rent. When he cleaned his new house and was ready to move in, it was completely dark. It was impossible for Klein to cook at home alone. He went out and ate at a restaurant on the street below the house he had rented. He sat along the street. From here, he could see the lights of his original house. As the sky got darker, the lights of other houses gradually lit up. The lights in the house where Benson and Melissa lived were only on for a short while before they fell into complete darkness again. Klein ate the tasteless meal and wondered who would wash the dishes at home tonight. It should be Benson. Melissa always came back later because of her classes. Now that he was not at home, Benson would definitely love Melissa, his only relative, more. He would definitely say this: "You should spend your time studying. Learn more knowledge so that you won't become a curly-haired baboon." If Melissa wanted to refute, Benson would let her go back to her room to fiddle with her favorite mechanical items. As Klein thought about it, a smile unconsciously appeared at the corner of his mouth. He did not choose to meet Benson and Melissa. Tomorrow, he would come here to stroll around under the pretext of taking an early morning walk. Benson has passed the civil service exam and has fixed working hours. Melissa is the same, except for the weekend when she doesn't have to go to school or work. It was past 9 o'clock at night. Klein came to the Brave bar that Leonard had always liked to go to before, ordered a glass of Southwell beer, and sat in the corner to drink slowly. Sure enough, Leonard walked in from the door around 10 o'clock. He was obviously a regular here. As soon as the waiter saw him, he was very enthusiastic to entertain him. Leonard ordered 3 cocktails in one breath and sat in front of the more conspicuous bar, drinking alone in silence. After not seeing him for a while, Leonard looked a little thin, his beard began to be untidy, and his brows were always frowning. This image is not like the poet Leonard in the past. In the past, he cared most about his appearance and even combed his hair neatly. Now Leonard really looks like a frustrated and downtrodden poet. Perhaps sensing Klein's prying, Leonard glanced in this direction, but soon shifted his gaze and took a big sip of the wine. Klein retracted his gaze and prepared to finish this glass of Southwell beer and leave. He came here just to see Leonard. But before he left, another familiar person walked in at the door of the Brave bar, Count Hasta Campbell. He did not stay in Southwell County, but returned to Backland. Klein sat patiently in his seat again. Occasionally his eyes inadvertently swept over the figures of Leonard and Asta talking happily. It seems that Leonard is not lonely alone, so it's good. Klein smiled and stood up to leave, but he saw Asta and Leonard each holding a glass of wine and walking towards his position. Did they see through his identity? Probably not. If Leonard knew, he would definitely rush over. "Sir, do you mind sharing a table?" The person who spoke was Asta. Before Klein could say anything, he waved to the waiter to bring a few more glasses of wine. Klein glanced around and saw that the other tables were indeed full. He smiled and said, "Of course, I was just thinking about going back." Leonard looked at him and said teasingly, "Are you already married? If not, what's the point of going back alone? You might as well stay here and chat. Give this gentleman a glass of a true man's drink and it will be credited to my account." Leonard was very considerate and gave Klein a glass of wine. Klein wanted to refuse, but Hasta chuckled and said, "It's a kind of fate to meet here. Let's have a drink together and see you tomorrow. No one knows each other." Klein felt that there was a profound meaning in this sentence, but he did not think that the other party could see through his disguise so easily. "Thank you gentlemen for the wine." Klein sat patiently again, with no panic on his face. "Hey, Hasta, you have to stay in Backland for a few more days this time, otherwise I will never be able to find a drinking partner. Drinking alone will be too boring." Leonard's tone was already tinged with drunkenness. Asta brushed his fingers over the edge of the wineglass and asked curiously, "Isn't Mr. Klein also in Backland?" "He went to a far-away place and probably won't come back again." The look on Leonard's face was visibly lonely. He picked up the wineglass and took a big sip. "That's it," Asta whispered, picked up the wineglass and clinked it with Leonard, and added, "There are no absolutes in this world. Maybe he will come back when he wants to come back." "Return?" Leonard opened his mouth, trying to explain the true meaning of what he just said, but in the end he said nothing, but his eyes were a little bitter. Klein looked at this scene and was touched in his heart, but there was still no unnecessary expression on his face. "Do you think what I just said is right?" Hasta suddenly turned the topic to Klein. This made Klein stunned for a moment, but he quickly reacted and said with a smile, "I also think your friend will come back after he handles his own affairs." "You guys." Leonard wanted to laugh, but he still didn't say that Klein was dead. At this time, the waiter brought the wine that Asta and Leonard asked for. Hasta held the wine glass, looked at Klein and said, "You don't look like a Backland person." "Well, I just came back from overseas," Klein answered calmly. Leonard stared at him for a while and said, "You don't look very good. Can you really drink?" Using these words, Klein declined the wine Leonard gave him and said, "I can only have a small drink. I really can't drink too much." "What a pity." Leonard did not force it. Hasta glanced at Klein again, and deliberately raised the topic to ask about Klein's current situation. Faced with such a temptation, Klein also felt a little more confused. Could it be that Mr. Hasta saw his disguised identity and there was a flaw in him? No, he was just testing and not sure of his true identity. "It seems that I can't stay here any longer, otherwise my disguise at this moment will definitely be exposed." When Klein had this idea, Hasta had completely stopped probing and focused on talking to Leonard. From talking about Backland's current situation to the Kingdom of Lowen's declaration of all-out war on the Fasak Empire, to Leonard's personal relationship issues. "Oh, love, I won't believe this illusory emotion," Leonard resisted. "That's a pity. Miss Serafina just asked me about your current situation last time." "What?" Leonard's body froze for an instant, and his tone also became much louder. "As expected, you still care about Miss Serafina?" Leonard was silent for a moment and said in a painful tone, "This is not a matter of not caring, but another reason." Hasta smiled and patted his shoulder and said, "It's okay, I just made that sentence up." "Asta." Leonard was so angry that he wanted to sever ties with Hasta. Klein couldn't help but feel happy when he caught a glimpse of this scene. But when he raised his eyes, he found that Hasta, who was supposed to be fighting with Leonard, had a serious look in his eyes. Suo-si looked at himself. What a keen insight. He paid such attention to me just after meeting me for the first time. There was no change in the expression on Klein's face, as if he didn't notice Hasta's deliberate observation. He sat for a while longer, then stood up to say goodbye and left. This time Leonard and Hasta did not say anything to persuade him to stay. The Brave Bar is still some distance away from the place where Klein rented it. He originally wanted to wait for a carriage, but was unable to wait. It wasn't until Leonard and Hasta also appeared at the door of the Brave Bar that a carriage appeared at the corner of the street. It drove towards Hasta and stopped in front of Hasta. "This should be his personal car. Sir, let me give you a ride. Backland's nights have been a bit uneven recently," Hasta said. Klein declined politely. He did not want to ride in the same carriage with Mr. Hasta, which would greatly increase the probability of his identity being exposed. Leonard also came over and asked where he lived. "I live in the South District of the Bridge," Klein answered naturally. "Not so convenient," Leonard muttered, and then asked Klein to wait here for a moment. He walked into the Brave Man Bar, and soon a new carriage appeared. "Thank you two gentlemen for your generosity." Klein thanked him, got into the carriage and left. After Klein left, Leonard asked with probing eyes, "Asta, you seem to value this person especially tonight?" "Have it. Do you really think I'm blind? Tisk, you have discovered this. It seems that my acting skills will be better next time. Just keep talking." Leonard ignored Hasta's witticism and frowned slightly. "I also think this person is a bit familiar, but it's obviously just the first time I've seen him. It's getting late, I should go back and rest." Hasta did not continue chatting, got into his family's carriage and left. When Leonard was left alone, he looked at the empty streets and realized an important problem. Now it was his turn to go back without a carriage. He could only go into the Brave Bar to urge him, and waited for 20 minutes before he successfully got on the carriage. Back at his place of residence, Leonard took a shower and lay on the bed and couldn't help but ask, "Old man, did you see anything tonight? Don't you have eyes yourself?" "Old man, you are so temperamental tonight. I'm just too lazy to waste too much time with you. Old man, you must have seen something, right?" But no matter how Leonard asked, the old man didn't give him another answer. At around 9 o'clock the next day, Leonard went to the Red Glove Team's stronghold to gather as usual.
But today, in addition to their captain, there is also a new bishop, Bishop Max. It is said that he was specially sent from the Serenity Church.
Did something big happen? Leonard murmured in his heart, standing upright and energetic. This morning someone sent a report letter which said that the mastermind behind the Capin case was someone from the Lowen royal family, and also gave several locations. Their captain briefly talked about the matter and then asked them for their respective opinions. Leonard remembered that Klein was in charge of the Capin case. The human trafficker Capin also ended up dead. The matter ended here. Now who has revealed this matter again, and it also involves the Lowen royal family.
As for his opinion, he didn't have any. He would do whatever the superiors ordered him to do.
After a brief discussion, the newly arrived Bishop Max said that he would jointly investigate the matter with people from the Church of Steam and Machinery and the Church of Storms. Members of Leonard's Red Glove team were also selected to become law enforcement officers.
Leonard thought it was quite interesting to jointly investigate the Lowen royal family, but the old man never revealed to him the profound meaning of these things.
When the Church of Night, the Church of Steam and Machinery, and the Church of Storms jointly acted, a new situation occurred in Backland. Those extraordinaries who had participated in the search and persecution of the Stars believers have recently suffered revenge from the Stars believers. On their bodies, a Stars card was left with the honorable name of the Stars Returner. In addition to the actions of the Star believers, the Aurora Society, which had been dormant for a long time, also reappeared in the public eye. They planned several terrorist attacks in succession. There was also the Witch Sect, which was revealed to be cooperating with the Lowen royal family, and various scandals broke out among some members of the royal family. Spies from Fasak Empire, Intis Republic, Feniboat, Southern Continent Balam Empire and other countries also began to fish in troubled waters at this time. For a time, the entire Backland was shrouded in a state of chaos and disorder. Hastur stayed at home and did not go out. Except for the action of the Star believers, which surprised him, he contributed to most other things.
He needs chaos. This is a need for performance, and it is also a means to involve the energy of the Lowen royal family and the three churches.
It is very simple to do this. He only needs to stay in the Hall of Stars, and through divine revelation, he can quietly guide those devout believers to do some radical actions.
As for the cards with the names of those who have returned to the Stars everywhere, it was not his doing, nor is it something Bernadette and others would do. There should be someone hiding in the dark, wanting to make the followers of the Stars a target.
The most likely ones are followers of the fallen Mother Goddess, who is now fighting to the death against her.
Under his influence, his followers are even crazier than the crazy people in the Aurora Society.
When Hastur was meditating in the study, Madame Lisa came and knocked on the door. With his ability, he could have appeared in the study quietly, but he always maintained the highest respect for him. "Come in." Lisa opened the door and came in, saying respectfully, "The blood of the extraordinary people from the 22 extraordinary paths required by the Lord of God has been collected." "So fast?" Hastur raised his eyebrows in surprise. He had only issued this task for less than 3 days. Now that many extraordinary people have poured into Backland, this makes the task easier.
"You did a good job." Hastur was very satisfied with their efficiency and handed another task to Madame Lisa.
He needed Madame Lisa to help him keep an eye on the movements of the former Grand Duke of Southwell, Drink Augustus. According to the time, Grand Duke of Southwell should have died under the arrangement of keys. If this news was passed back to Backland, Grand Duke Drink Augustus would definitely target himself. Especially in such a chaotic situation now, it is very suitable for him to secretly attack me, so I need to be careful. I will follow the orders of the Lord God. Well, go down.
After Madame Lisa left, Asta stretched, walked to the window sill, and looked towards the south of the bridge.
He is now sure that the man he met with Leonard at the Brave Bar that night was Klein. At first, he was just suspicious. Even after many attempts, he could not be sure. It was not until he went home and went to the Hall of Stars to conduct a fate peek that he really confirmed that the man was Klein.
The verification method is very simple. If the man is just an ordinary person, then everything about him will be exposed. Once he has something special, it will cover up the relevant fate. Through this reverse proof, Asta was sure that there was something wrong with that person. Combined with the fact that Benson and Melissa now live in the south of the bridge, Klein's identity was quickly locked.
He was thinking about whether to drag Klein to deal with George III together. Because of the butterfly effect he caused, Klein did not really understand in depth how many heinous crimes George III committed in order to be promoted to the Black Emperor. Without this premise, Klein would not be so determined to oppose George III's deification. Of course, he could guide Klein to discover the true face of George III. After thinking for a long time, Hasta decided to drag Klein into the water. Without Klein's participation, he always felt that something was missing. And this can also be regarded as the first cooperation between the stars and the Fool. As for the glorious task of guiding Klein, it was given to Furs to complete, asking her to pray to Mr. Fool and bitterly recount the evil deeds committed by George III in order to become a god. When Furs received this task from Hasta, she was completely confused. She was just a little Sequence 7, and she really didn't want to be involved in such things, and she had to pray to Mr. Fool. Fortunately, this time she didn't need to make up lies to deceive Mr. Fool, but just report to Mr. Fool her discoveries about George III during this period. But how did a Sequence 7 know such a major secret? She must first find a suitable reason, and then pray to Mr. Fool. It seems that she can only blame the wise man. Furs, what's wrong with you? Seeing that Furs was in a daze, Zio came over and touched her forehead for a while. You don't have a fever. I'm just thinking about some problems. It's rare that your brain finally starts to work. Furs patted Zio's head and pretended to be angry. You're much dumber than me. You can't even cook well, and you dare to say I'm stupid? The two played for a while until after 10 o'clock in the evening. Furs stayed alone in her room and prayed to Mr. Fool. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Above the gray fog, Klein sat at the head of the bronze table, looking down slightly, overlooking the picture sent from the magician lady. Dear Mr. Fool, I recently got a big secret. I think you will definitely be interested in it, so I disturbed you in the middle of the night. Go on, Klein just said lightly. It's like this. I got an accurate message from a big shot. King George III of the Kingdom of Loan wants to be promoted to Sequence 0 Black Emperor recently. Hearing this, Klein suddenly became energetic. He got accurate information from Rissel's diary. At the last moment of his life, Rissel jumped to the Black Emperor path. If George III successfully promoted to Sequence 0 Black Emperor, then Rissel, who was not yet dead, would fall completely. He was still grateful to this fellow countryman who helped him a lot, but he wanted to influence George III to be promoted to Black Emperor, and his power alone was still too weak. I wonder if Mr. Fool has ever heard of the Capin case that caused a sensation in Backland. The Loan royal family was the manipulator behind the Capin case. They sold a large number of slaves in order to build the mausoleum needed to promote the Black Emperor. Furs continued to speak, telling all the crimes committed by George III. After speaking, she lowered her eyes, feeling very uneasy, fearing that Mr. Fool would suddenly ask her about the source of these news. Klein did want to ask Miss Magician about the source of these information, but thinking that with Mr. Fool's image of knowing everything, it would be too cheap to ask such a question. Promote the Black Emperor? This is not a good time. Klein chuckled in an unfathomable way, and then cut off contact with Miss Magician. In order to verify the authenticity of these news, Klein used the power of gray fog to confirm it through divination. The final answer was that every word Miss Magician said tonight was true. Klein was silent, thinking of the innocent girl in the Capin case, and then thinking of the Backland smog incident. In order to be promoted to the Black Emperor, George III teamed up with the witch cult to do so many evil things. Can he really watch them succeed in being promoted? After just a moment of thinking, he already had the answer in his heart. I need a capable helper. Klein quickly thought of the mysterious Queen Bernadette. She was Rissel's daughter. She must be more active than him in the matter of George III's promotion to the Black Emperor. She is now a believer of the stars. With the authority of the stars to watch over everything, he will definitely tell Bernadette such important news. Klein thought seriously for a moment, and after returning to the real world, he contacted Will. Currently, among the beings in Backland who have the ability to interfere with George III's deification, Will can definitely be considered one of them. Will, lazily wearing blue floral pajamas with star patterns, appeared in his dream. After hearing what Klein wanted to ask,
Will suddenly became energetic, and he looked at Klein with a complicated and embarrassed look. George III does want to take this opportunity to become a god, but you can't stop him with your strength, not to mention that he has a bunch of useful subordinates and helpers around him.
Will is not optimistic about this matter. I know, so I came to you to see if you know any way to stop him. Destroy his mausoleum, which can shake the foundation of his godhood. The more mausoleums are destroyed, the more likely it is that his promotion will fail. Will gave his suggestion after a brief thought.
Thank you. Klein was very satisfied with this suggestion.
Will coughed lightly and said, I could have helped you a little, but recently that stupid snake Ouroboros has been staying in Backland and staring at me, making it difficult for me to free my hands to help you.
Will you be in danger? Don't worry, I have played hide and seek with him countless times, and he hasn't been able to catch me, but I can't take the initiative to expose my identity. Klein smiled and said, that's enough, I will find a suitable helper myself. Find Bernadette, he is currently in Backland, and he will definitely be involved in this matter.
Yeah. After ending the dream with Will, Klein glanced at the time. It was already past 11 o'clock in the evening. He did not fall asleep, but moved a chair to sit in front of the desk, spread out a blank piece of letter paper, and began to write on it. He wanted to write to Mr. Azek and ask for his opinion and help. Interfering with George III's deification was full of dangers. At a critical moment, he needed Mr. Azek to help him once.
As for the people who destroyed the mausoleum, in addition to Bernadette, he also planned to ask the messenger lady to help, although it would cost a certain amount of gold coins. Alas, I am going to be poor again. A royal manor in the suburbs. In the study on the second floor, the former Grand Duke of Southwell, Derek Augustus, had a gloomy face, and a letter in his hand turned into powder. His child, the current Grand Duke of Southwell, is dead. The cause of death was drinking too much and accidentally falling into the artificial lake at home and drowning. It sounds like a very normal reason for death, but he can be sure that there must be the influence of extraordinary power here.
The most likely person to do this is the young Earl Campbell. Because a few days ago, there was also a letter from Southwell County, which said that the person he sent had died at the hands of Earl Campbell. For this reason, he sent another confidant to South Wiltshire, but the death letter had already been delivered to him. In order to get rid of his suspicion, he deliberately followed the second son of Earl Hall back to Backland. Drink Augustus' eyes were full of cold murderous intent, and there was a hint of sarcasm on the corner of his mouth. In the face of absolute strength, such cleverness is just seeking death. In order to avoid any accidents, he decided to personally send off this young and promising Earl. As for the explanation, who does he need to explain to? Even the current King George III would not punish him at all. The kingdom of Lowen is the kingdom of their Augustus family. He turned out a portrait from the drawer of the desk. There were him and his children on it, although that was decades ago. At 3 o'clock in the morning, he walked out of the study, and then took a step out to the bustling Queen's District. The distance between the two places is also a rule, and he has long been able to skillfully use the ability of the rules. It was easy to find a road that led directly to Queen's. He could even reach the doorstep of Earl Campbell in one step. But in order to give face to the Church of the Three Gods, he did not do it so obviously. So, he chose to walk from Queen's. There were not many pedestrians wandering on the streets late at night. Even in the prosperous Queen's, many people did not dare to go out late at night because of the chaotic situation during this period. Even the bars that were open from night to morning along the street closed their doors and closed early for rest. Drinker Augustus, while walking, recalled the past years. He owed his son, but he did not care too much. After all, he did not care much about the bond of blood inheritance. But when he really heard the news of his child's death, he still felt a sense of heartache for the first time in a long time. Although it was very slight, it was enough to sentence Earl Campbell to death. When Drinker Augustus was about to approach his destination, the surrounding scene suddenly changed. Drinker Augustus stopped and calmly watched the scene in front of him. He knew that there must be a powerful Beander guarding the Earl Campbell. But this is Backland, and he is a member of the Augustus family, and a Sequence 2 balancer. But he waited for a long time, and no one appeared here except that the scene in front of him changed from a busy street to a dense forest. Drinker Augustus narrowed his eyes and waited patiently for a while, but still no one appeared. Deliberately delaying time, want to escape.
Drinker Augustus was not worried about this problem. If this was not Backland, with his ability, he would not need to be so cautious. His right foot took a step forward, and a black rule extended from the sole of his foot, then forked, turning into 2, 4, hundreds, and thousands, like a black python crisscrossing.
The dense forest world in front of him was shattered in an instant and returned to the original street. He was still standing in the street, but the sky above his head was not the crimson moon in the middle of the night, but the bright morning sun. This made him frown slightly, and even he did not notice the change in the speed of time.
No, it's not that the speed of time has changed, but someone has stolen this period of time. Drinker Augustus looked solemn, and after carefully sensing for a while, he found that the other party was not that capable, and should have achieved this effect with the help of some kind of seal.
It's only a few hours, where can you escape to? Drinker Augustus carefully sensed it, but found that Earl Campbell did not take the opportunity to leave Backland, but was strolling happily near the Holy Wind Church with a little black cat in his arms. Instead of taking the opportunity to leave Backland, he hid near the Holy Wind Church. Was he thinking of seeking shelter from the Lord of Storms?
Drink Augustus thought this and had no idea of taking action for a moment.
The Lowen royal family is now on the cusp of a storm. Although killing a young earl is nothing, killing someone under the watchful eye of the Lord of Storms will not calm down the storm so easily. He had to admit that Earl Campbell was very smart and knew how to find a chance for himself. But the shelter from the storm was only temporary. Could he always hide in the Holy Wind Church?
Drink Augustus also came to the vicinity of the Holy Wind Church, but did not take action. He just stared at Earl Campbell, who was wandering on the street from a distance. Then he waited from early morning to afternoon and then to evening. The Earl of Campbell had no intention of leaving the Holy Wind Church, and his range of activities was limited to the vicinity of the Holy Wind Church, leaving him no opportunity to take action. When he saw Hasta chatting with Bishop Ron of the Holy Wind Church, donating a donation of 500 gold pounds, and making up his mind to stay here overnight, Drink Augustus finally lost the patience to wait any longer. Go down. In the current situation, unless he gave up action, he could only kill people by force under the watch of the Lord of Storms. If it kills with one blow, the Storm Lord will not have time to react. Moreover, will the Storm Lord descend for a less devout believer? When Hasta finished communicating with Bishop Ron and stepped out of the door of the Holy Wind Church, Drink Augustus stepped forward and came to Hasta. The rules and chains around him moved together, sealing off the nearby space. He raised his right hand slightly, and the chain of rules turned into countless black and cold spears, all thrusting towards Hasta, who was still standing there, as if he was frightened. Not sure if it was an illusion, but Drink Augustus saw Hasta giving him a sarcastic smile, with his mouth slightly open, as if to say, "You idiot." Drink Augustus had a premonition of something bad, but the regular spear had already penetrated Hasta's body in front of him, pinning him in midair. Just die like this? Just when Drink Augustus was doubtful, the face of Hasta in front of him suddenly turned into Bishop Ron. Drink Augustus' pupils shrank instantly. He actually assassinated a bishop who devoutly believed in the Lord of Storms in front of the gate of Holy Wind Church. How so? How could I not even be able to tell people apart? Was he blinded by some force? Drink Augustus had too many questions in his mind, but he was not in the mood to think about the answers to the questions at the moment. Run away from here quickly. Without hesitation, Drink Augustus chose to escape. The sky, which was still peaceful at the moment, suddenly gathered black clouds, and thunder and lightning were brewing in the clouds. Drink Augustus had fled from the gate of Holy Wind Church to the suburbs, but the black cloud in the sky still shrouded his head. The Lord of Storms is angry. He has really come. A bolt of white lightning suddenly fell from the black cloud, followed by hundreds of thunders coming together. Drink Augustus' mouth was dry, his scalp was numb, his hands and feet were cold, and his heart stopped for 2 beats. But until now, he could only block the divine power from the Lord of Storms with all his strength, hoping to survive until rescue arrived. He took out a sealed object that he carried with him, and a miniature pale golden kingdom held up a golden light shield to protect him inside. But in just 2 seconds, the surface of the golden mask was covered with thunder patterns, and it shattered with a click. The entire pale golden country was instantly baptized by thunder into a ruin of steaming black smoke. With a brief barrier, Drink Augustus opened the door to the spiritual world and stayed away from here. He wanted to escape from the gaze of the Lord of Storms as soon as possible. The thunder in the sky never stopped, rumbling, and thunder and lightning stretched out like silver-white tentacles towards the door of the spiritual world where Drink Augustus escaped.
Even if he is hiding in the spirit world, the anger of the storm cannot be calmed down so easily. At this time, there was suddenly a force in the dark that helped Drink Augustus block the blow, allowing him to use the spiritual world gate to stay away. The angry thunder with nowhere to vent destroyed everything in the surrounding area.
In the spirit world, Drink Augustus vomited a mouthful of blood. There was faint current flowing in the blood. Even from a distance, he could still feel the roar of the storm outside. If there hadn't been a helping hand secretly helping him, he would never have been able to escape into the spirit world smoothly. Damn it! What a good idea! Drink Augustus was angry but helpless, and assassinated the bishop of the Church of Storms at the gate of Holy Wind Church. Even he could not bear this crime. Even if he could escape the sanctions of the storm, he would still need to remain anonymous and hide in the dark in the future. When the roar of the storm outside gradually faded away, Drink Augustus planned to leave the spiritual world and head to South Wales, where he would wait for Hasta to fall into a trap. At this time, he saw a small red firebird flying slowly in his direction. Drink Augustus was wary, and suddenly his face changed drastically. He hurriedly opened the door to the spiritual world and wanted to escape. But he found that he could not tear open the portal to the spiritual world at all. The surrounding spiritual space was like the hardest diamond, and he could not shake it no matter how hard he tried. He could only watch the harmless little firebird come to him, and then he saw the little firebird in front of him, which was the size of his head, suddenly multiply several times, dozens of times. Like a giant, staring at him with a playful expression. Drinker Augustus was extremely panicked, but his body flew uncontrollably towards the huge firebird, and then it was like a small insect being held in his beak. At this time, Drinker Augustus realized that it was not the little firebird that had grown bigger, but his body that had shrunk. What kind of spiritual creature is this? No, it's a god. The new god of death from the southern continent. Drinker Augustus' eyes widened, and he finally recognized the origin of the little firebird, but he could no longer leave. This new god of death is in the real world, unlike the Lord of Storms, who needs to descend through a medium. Moreover, the god of death holds a certain authority in the spiritual world. It can be said that the spiritual world is part of his kingdom of God. This little bug is not enough to fill your teeth. A familiar voice with a chuckle came. Drinker Augustus tried to look up and found that the person coming was the Earl Campbell whom he wanted to kill. Chew. Gregory held Drinker Augustus' body in her mouth, flapped her wings, and landed on Asta's shoulder, as if she was proudly asking for credit. Let me see. Asta lowered his head slightly and looked at Drinker Augustus, who had shrunk to the size of a caterpillar, and asked curiously, "Why does this little bug look like the former Grand Duke of Southwell? Who are you?" Drinker Augustus endured the fear in his heart and asked calmly. "Guess." Asta smiled, "I don't want you to die with your eyes closed." After the words fell, Drinker Augustus had no time to speak angrily, and his whole body and soul were bitten into 2 pieces. Then his 2 broken souls were swallowed into his mouth by Gregory. After a while, Gregory spat out the extraordinary characteristics of Drinker Augustus and looked at it with disdain. The flames burned, and Drinker Augustus' body, which was broken into 2 pieces, was completely turned into nothingness, without even a trace of residue left. "Thank you for your hard work this time." Asta stroked Gregory's head and whispered. "Chew." Gregory rubbed Asta's face happily. "Burn all the traces here." Chew. In the Holy Wind Church, Bishop Ron was assassinated and was seriously injured and dying. If it weren't for the Storm Lord's gaze and the miracle, he would never have survived. A bishop was assassinated at the door of the church, and even angered the Storm Lord, which greatly stimulated the anger of the Storm Church believers. Soon, they locked their target on Drinker Augustus through the clues left at the scene. In response, the Lowen royal family said that this was Drinker Augustus's private behavior and had nothing to do with the Lowen royal family. George III was furious about this, smashed a lot of antiques, expelled Drinker Augustus from the Lowen royal family, and left his life and death to the Storm Church. But this still could not extinguish the anger of the Storm Church, because Drinker Augustus disappeared completely. The Storm Church believed that the Lowen royal family must have hidden people, and decided to conduct a thorough search of the residences of all Lowen royal family members. The Church of the Goddess of Night and the Church of Steam and Machinery just stood quietly behind the Storm Church. Although they did not speak out, their meaning was very clear. In the end, the Lowen royal family compromised and allowed the people of the Storm Church to search at will.
Such changes made the already chaotic situation in Backland even more chaotic.
At this time, Hastur was choosing gifts and preparing to visit Bishop Rohn, who was seriously injured but not dead. After all, the reason why Bishop Ron suffered such a sudden disaster was because Mrs. Lisa secretly exchanged his fate with hers.
So drinker Augustus mistakenly thought Bishop Ron was himself when he was not careful. In other words, Bishop Ron took the knife for himself. When we arrived at the hospital where Bishop Ron was recuperating, there were already a lot of people around. After this incident, Bishop Ron, who is blessed by the Lord of Storms, instantly became a favored person of God, and the Storm Church also sent many people to protect him. Looking at the crowd of people who came to visit, Asta handed the gift to the person who was responsible for taking care of Bishop Ron, and was about to turn around and leave, but happened to meet Leonard, who also came here. Leonard greeted his teammates and came in the direction of Asta. "Asta, are you here to visit Bishop Ron too?" "Well, I have a good relationship with Bishop Ron." Asta answered naturally, they are a lifelong friendship. Leonard glanced at the nobles blocking the door of the ward and said with emotion, "He is a blessing in disguise. He is destined to enter the upper echelons of the Church of Storms after becoming a God-favored one. You can also try. Maybe you will be the next God-favored one." "No, I don't want to be watched like this." Leonard rejected Asta's proposal, and after chatting with Asta for a few more words, he lowered his voice and said, "Backland has been a little bit uneasy recently. You should try to stay at home and don't go out." Asta was very surprised. "Is it so serious?" Leonard nodded seriously, reminded Asta to pay attention to safety, and then went to meet up with his teammates. After leaving the hospital, Asta took a carriage back home. Before he got home, the carriage was stopped by someone. Asta lifted the curtain and looked ahead. A carriage that was more magnificent and luxurious than his own was parked in front. The horse used to pull the carriage was a purebred white horse with no mixed colors, which looked very noble. "A member of the Lowen royal family?" Asta lowered the curtain and sat quietly for a while until the coachman outside told him that the second prince wanted to discuss something with him, and then he got out of the carriage. The second prince was not very old, and looked about the same age as Greg. He inherited George III's resolute and serious face, and was slightly shorter than himself. "Hello, second prince." Asta greeted the second prince politely. He just waved his hand, his eyes full of scrutiny, got off the carriage, then took 2 steps closer, and said in a restrained, angry voice, "Answer me honestly, has Grand Duke D-Link ever come to you?" Quote? Asta showed a puzzled look. "Puzzled? I have never had any contact with Grand Duke D-Link, why would such a big man like him come to me?" "Hey, don't let me know you are lying today." The second prince wanted to get on the carriage and leave after he finished speaking. Asta said behind him, "I heard that Grand Duke D-Link tried to assassinate Bishop Ron. It is better for the second prince to stay away from him to avoid being implicated. Are you also qualified to teach me how to do things?" The second prince raised his head very proudly, got on the carriage, lowered the curtain and left. Tisk, with such a temperament and wisdom, it is no wonder that after the death of George III, it was the eldest prince who inherited the throne. Asta didn't care about this little episode at all. If the person who asked him just now was George III, he might be a little nervous. A second prince who was destined not to become the next king was not qualified for him to care. After returning home, Butler Neil told Asta that Earl Hall had sent someone to invite him to see if he had time to attend the dinner tonight. Asta looked at the time, it was 5:20, and guessed that Earl Hall wanted to thank him because of Alfred. So he sent someone to reply to Earl Hall, and then went upstairs to take a bath. It was a little after 7 o'clock in the evening, at Earl Hall's house. Asta's arrival was greeted by Alfred's warm hospitality. Seeing his high-spirited appearance, Asta couldn't help but tease him about which lady he would marry this time to make him so happy. "Asta, you don't understand. I'm used to living in the South Continent, and my aesthetic taste is almost abnormal. It's still better to have girls from Backland." Alfred showed a melancholy look. "It seems that you are very satisfied with your marriage partner this time." "It's okay. If there are no accidents, we will be engaged next month and we can get married at the end of this year." It's so fast. Asta really admires the speed of marriage between nobles. It's almost August now. It can be settled in a few months to meet, get engaged and get married. It's probably no different from the blind date in the previous life. If we really compare them, Alfred is still a little inferior.
Asta, you have to work a little harder. You have always had a good reputation in the circle of noble ladies.
Asta smiled and didn't talk to Alfred about this matter.
If they continue to talk, Alfred should say that the lady of so-and-so is very good to see if he is interested in meeting her. After entering the door of Earl Hall's house, Earl Hall and others were waiting for him at the dining table.
Hibbert was not at home tonight, probably to make room for Alfred. "Good evening, Mr. Asta." Miss Audrey smiled sweetly, still elegant and generous. Susie, who was standing at her feet, also wagged her tail enthusiastically at Asta, but when she saw that Asta appeared with empty hands, she was a little depressed and lay on the ground without raising her head.
"Sit down." It was also a family dinner, and Earl Hall's attitude was getting better and better.
"You should stay for a while when you come back this time?" The one who spoke was the Countess. "Maybe I'll stay for half a month." Asta gave an uncertain date, less than 10 days before George III became a god. After completing this task, he would consider returning to South Wales. Then, the Countess asked Asta about his life in South Wales, and asked about various family matters in a gentle tone. Asta just responded calmly, occasionally talking about the customs and practices of South Wales.
After a dinner, almost an hour had passed. Asta was slightly relieved after tasting the last bite of the delicious dessert.
The person who put the most pressure on him at the dinner tonight was the Countess. The kind and caring words about family matters made him feel flattered. After the dinner, Asta discussed some things with Earl Hall and Alfred in the study, mainly around the fact that the Kingdom of Lowen had declared a full-scale war on the Faesac Empire. The news of the fall of the god of war had not yet spread, and even Earl Hall was not aware of it. He just said that the church was very determined to fight and was full of confidence.
Could it be that there is some big problem inside the Faesac Empire, giving us the Kingdom of Lowen a good opportunity to take advantage of it? This is Alfred's guess, and it is also the view that Earl Hall and other nobles have discussed privately. Asta did not say anything about this, but just said that he would guard the coastal gates for the Kingdom of Lowen.
After the chat, Asta had time to meet Audrey and Susie. This time was also in the garden, and a little different from the last time. Earl Hall did not come to stop and watch. "Woof." The first to greet Asta was Susie's voice with a little disappointment and anger. Asta squatted down, stroked Susie's head, and chuckled, "Don't worry, I have brought back the books I promised you, and I will have someone send them to you in 2 days." Susie's mood instantly became happy, and she looked at Audrey proudly, as if saying, "I have a gift, but you don't." Audrey looked at Asta with a faint look. "Mr. Asta, are you too fond of Susie?" "It's just a few books." Asta stood up and took out a gift wrapped in a delicate small gift box from his pocket and gave it to Audrey. "Do you still remember the spiritual tower you encountered in the spiritual world?"
Is this gift related to it? Audrey's eyes brightened, and she was looking forward to receiving this gift.
"Well, it can help you better navigate that spiritual world."
This is a miniature crystal ball, which can stabilize the mind of the peeper and become a guiding star, so that Audrey will not lose her way when exploring the spiritual world. When encountering the same problem as last time, Audrey can easily get out of the spiritual world with the guidance of the crystal ball.
This thing was found by Hastur in the treasure house of the Yellow Monk organization.
"Mr. Hastur, do you mind if I open the gift now?" "Of course I don't mind." Audrey opened the gift in front of Hastur and held the crystal ball, which was not even the size of a fist, in her palm to observe. Just by simply staring at it, Audrey could feel her mind calm down and become more resilient.
Susie's eyes were also attracted by the crystal ball, but she shook herself and recovered quickly, then lay down at Audrey's feet without interest. "Mr. Hastur, are you interested in exploring the spiritual world with me? I have found a lot of interesting things in it during this period of time." Audrey retracted her gaze from the crystal ball and turned to look at Hastur, with expectation and excitement in her eyes. Asta really wanted to refuse the invitation, but he couldn't bear it. Audrey's expectant eyes were too lethal. "Great. I have never dared to explore the depths. With Mr. Hastur accompanying me, I can completely reveal its mystery."
Audrey's excited tone did not conceal it. After speaking, she glanced at Asta sheepishly, then turned around and showed a proud smile towards Susie.
Woof. Susie stood up from the ground, walked over, rubbed Haster's trousers, indicating that it also wanted to join this spiritual adventure.
No, Susie can't join. Audrey objected with a slight blush.
Woof. Susie looked at Audrey with a puzzled expression, and Hester also looked over. After just a little thought, he knew what Audrey was worried about.
In that spiritual world, there must be some special places, such as unconsciously speaking what is in your heart.
Audrey was probably afraid that Susie would inadvertently expose her little secret, so she resisted like this. Thinking of this, Hester immediately stood on the same front as Susie. I also think Susie needs to experience it and develop its extraordinary abilities. And sometimes Susie's inhuman attributes may help us solve some difficulties. Woof. Susie was wagging her tail happily. All right. Audrey could only reluctantly agree to let Susie participate, and was already thinking about how to provide Susie with emergency training. Susie must not be allowed to expose all her secrets to Mr. Hester in the spiritual world.
Soon, Audrey used the excuse of going back to her room to rest first, and took away Susie, who wanted to talk to Hester about psychology.
Since he and Audrey were going to explore that spiritual world tonight, Hester did not refuse Mrs. Hall's invitation this time and chose to stay in the guest room of Earl Hall's house to rest for the night. This made Count Hall's eyes darken, but he just looked at Hester quietly and said nothing. Countess Hall was very happy and prepared a guest room for Hester. Alfred patted Hester's shoulder with an inexplicable smile on his face. Asta, it seems that my family likes you very much. At around 11 o'clock at night, after Hester finished having a few drinks with Alfred and Earl Hall, he went back to his room and lay down in the guest room that had been prepared to rest. After waiting for another half an hour, he appeared in Audrey's room in a spirit state. Audrey was half lying on the edge of the bed, leaning her upper body slightly, reaching out to tease Susie's head. At the same time, she took the trouble to instruct. Susie, you must remember the precautions I just told you, and don't take it to heart. There are random thoughts inside. Okay, Audrey. Susie nodded affirmatively. Audrey, you should believe me, and you should also believe Mr. Hester. No matter what secrets I tell, it will not affect your stay in Hester. The image in the heart. Susie, don't you know that every girl should have her own secret?
Oh, what if you accidentally said it yourself? Then I must have done it on purpose.
Woof. Susie said nothing more. Boom, 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 boom.
The sound of knocking on the window was rhythmic, which was the code agreed between Asta and Audrey.
Audrey, who had been waiting for a long time, opened her spiritual vision and saw Hester, who had come to the window. This was the first time she saw Mr. Hester in the spirit state. He only had a rough outline and no specific facial features. He must have been hidden deliberately. After looking at it like this, he was exactly the same as the figure who knocked on the window last time. Audrey smiled and took out the pivot crystal ball that could connect to the spiritual world from the bedside position. In the past, if she wanted to enter that spiritual world, she only had to put the crystal ball under her pillow and enter it naturally. But she had not yet tried to invite anyone else into the spiritual world, not even Susie. In case something happened, she always asked Susie to stay outside so that she could be responsible for waking her up in case of an accident. Audrey, you lie down and rest as usual, enter the spiritual world first, and I will take care of other things. Asta gave a simple instruction, and Audrey lay on her back, slowly closed her eyes, breathed gradually and evenly, and soon entered the spiritual world. Susie, you should know how to get into other people's minds, right? Woof. After telling Susie what to pay attention to, Asta took Susie into Audrey's spiritual world. Then passed through the crystal stone hub and arrived at the silver-white spiritual tower. Audrey had already been waiting here. When she saw Hester and Susie appear, she greeted them happily like the owner of this place. Mr. Hester, Susie, welcome to the Silver Tower. The Silver Tower is the name Audrey gave to this silver-white spiritual tower. The weird forest outside also has a new name, the Twisted Jungle. Woof. Susie was very curious and searched around the Silver Tower. Hester stood at the railing of the high tower outside, looking at this hazy and strange spiritual world. Last time, he overlooked the spiritual world from the perspective of the stars, and his vision expanded to a sea of minds, but now, he is only on one of the small spiritual islands. If there are any secrets and gifts in this spiritual world, they should be in the depths of the spiritual sea, where the skeleton of the spiritual dragon fell. Mr. Hastur, the east of here is the twisted jungle, the south is the silent castle, the west is the witch's house, and the north is close to the sea. If we want to leave here, the north is the best choice.
Audrey brought Susie to Hastur and pointed to the areas in different directions and made a brief introduction.
There must be a suitable name. Audrey felt Hastur's surprised eyes and blushed slightly. When she explored this spiritual world, she habitually gave some special areas or buildings a distinctive name. For example, the name of the silent castle in the south comes from an ancient castle in the south. When you enter the castle, you will unconsciously close the door of your heart, as if you are completely isolated from the outside world and don't want to say a word. As for the witch's house in the west, it's just because there is an empty cabin with candles burning there. She thinks it fits the residence of witches in the wild. North. Asta recalled the whole picture of this spiritual world last time he saw it. It seems that the remains of the spiritual dragon are indeed in the north of this spiritual island. The two people and the dog got off the silver tower and headed north. The road was all areas that Audrey had explored before, so there was no danger. It was not until they passed through a black forest and saw a clear lake that Audrey slowed down, took a deep breath, and gave Susie a small look. In this spiritual world, there is no scarlet moon even at night, but there is a faint starlight falling. Asta guessed that this should be the change caused by his last visit here as a group of stars. Under the hazy starlight, the lake looked more and more quiet and holy. Asta casually asked Audrey the name of the lake in front of him.
Audrey blinked gently and said, "This is a wishing lake. Mr. Asta can try to make a wish to it."
Woof. Susie also echoed on the side. Asta glanced at the man and the dog who were obviously hiding something, walked a few steps towards the lake, and came to the lakeside. The originally calm lake surface was rippling with shallow ripples, and then merged into the shape of a lake blue elf. Half of its body was out of the lake, with delicate features, pointed ears, and a pair of blue wings formed by water on its back gently flapping. Its eyes looked at Asta with innocence and curiosity. After a while, it spoke. "Traveler from afar, do you need any help?" "I want to know the hidden thoughts of a girl," Asta said, pointing his finger at Audrey who was about to watch the show. "Mr. Asta." Audrey panicked when she heard the words, and her face was no longer calm. She pinched the corners of her clothes with both hands and her cheeks were red. She just wanted to give Mr. Asta a surprise, but unexpectedly, Mr. Asta gave her a bigger surprise. "I can fulfill your wish, but you also need to answer one of my questions." "No problem." Asta agreed to this small deal, and the lake elf merged into the lake. Soon, a scene appeared on the calm lake surface. It was the scene where Audrey stood by the lake and chatted with the lake elf. "Can you leave the spiritual world and stay with me? I really want to have a cute elf that can accompany me. Small and can be held in the palm of my hand at any time."
Susie is really good, but she has been too obsessed with studying recently. She is just a dog, which makes me want to start working hard, for fear that I will be surpassed by her if I am not careful.
When I think of her looking at me with doubtful and disappointed eyes and saying, "Audrey, don't you even know the answer to this question? Since you like to ask questions, next time, I will bring Mr. Asta with me. His extensive knowledge will definitely satisfy your curiosity. I miss Mr. Asta when he was still very poor. At that time, I could at least beat him in terms of money." Audrey's crisp and clear voice came from the lake, and Asta and Susie looked at her at the same time. What is the experience of social death? Audrey really wants to jump into the lake now and hide deep in the bottom of the lake to avoid the scrutiny of Asta and Susie. "Audrey, you are so sure of my efforts and wisdom." Susie happily wagged her tail, which was almost up to the sky.
Audrey tried her best to suppress her strange feelings, slightly turned her body, and pretended not to hear Susie's proud voice. Asta just looked at Audrey's flustered and shy expression, and said nothing, but it seemed like he said something. The lake elf adhered to the simple principle born with it and asked his own question, are there still elves in the outside world? Such a question surprised Asta a little, and he couldn't help asking, are you really an elf? Even Audrey's eyes showed surprise. She remembered that this little elf was not so smart before. In the past, she was more of a wish-making machine, adhering to the principle of one wish and one question, monotonous and boring.
But now she looks very smart, as if she really has wisdom. Is it because of Mr. Asta? The lake elf asked puzzledly. Is this question your second wish?
No, this is a necessary supplement to answer your question. Asta corrected seriously.
The lake elf thought briefly and nodded. Yes, I am an elf of pure blood, a forest elf. I remember that our king is Sonyathalam and our queen is Goshenam. As she spoke, her eyes began to blur, and she was confused and bewildered. She murmured to herself, why do I suddenly remember these things? How did I get here? Who am I? As she murmured, the calm lake surface began to surge, and the swaying lake water quickly buried her and swallowed her figure. When the lake elf disappeared, the lake in front of her also disappeared, leaving only an empty pit.
Mr. Hasta, what did you do to her? Audrey opened her mouth slightly, her eyes full of shock and curiosity. She had come here many times, but she had never caused such a change.
Maybe she suddenly awakened her past memories. Hasta already understood this kind of situation. He could easily awaken some beings who had lost their minds and memories or were sleeping in the dust. This should be related to the characteristics of the Star Returner. But I've talked to her so many times before, and she has never changed like this.
Audrey stared at Asta with burning eyes. She didn't believe it was just a coincidence.
It may also be Susie's credit. You see, things suddenly became different when it came. Asta turned the topic to Susie. Audrey and Susie were speechless. Audrey even whispered in her heart that even Susie couldn't be fooled by such words. After the episode, the two people and the dog continued to go north. The sound of the sea tide gradually became louder, and there seemed to be more water vapor in the air. When they came to the coast, there was a more than 10-meter-high watchtower. It was built with stones. Because of the long-term erosion of coastal waves and water vapor, the entire watchtower was bumpy, as if a strong wind would blow it down. I've only come here as far as I can. Audrey spoke, looking at the endless calm sea. She had also thought about sailing, but was afraid of encountering any danger during the voyage, because the most dangerous place in the entire spiritual world is this spiritual sea. Susie may not be able to wake her up in time. Asta observed for a while and suggested, this is your spiritual island. As long as you think in your heart, it can generally come true. You can try to summon a spiritual ship that can sail far. Well, I'll try. Audrey had a smile on her face. When she was about to imagine a large ship that could carry Mr. Asta, herself and Susie, a ship had already sailed in the distant sea.
So fast. No, I haven't started to imagine yet. This is not my fault. This ship came by itself.
Audrey looked solemn and told Asta about her discovery and worries.
It seems that the owner of this spiritual world is not completely dead yet. Asta sighed in his heart. This change is probably caused by himself.
The ship coming from the distant sea has an oval hull, and the front and rear parts are sharp cones. There are 3 masts on the ship, and each mast is full of triangular sails.
As the ship approached, a dragon pattern embroidered on the triangular sail could be vaguely seen.
Mr. Asta, have you ever encountered such a thing?
Audrey was a little curious and a little worried. She was afraid that Mr. Asta would be implicated.
This spiritual world is illusory after all. Its remaining power is not enough to keep us here. Asta signaled Audrey not to worry too much, and don't you want to explore the secrets hidden in this spiritual world? Audrey smiled and tilted her head slightly and said, I didn't expect Mr. Asta to be so adventurous. When the ship approached the seashore, a wooden board for people to board the ship was automatically lowered. Asta asked Audrey and Susie to follow him on board. After boarding the ship, the wooden board was automatically retracted, but there was no one on the ship operating the wooden board. This scene made Audrey and Susie feel a little weird, and they couldn't help but follow Asta closely. The ship also automatically turned around and headed deep into the sea. Asta led Audrey and Susie around the ship, and no one was seen. Mr. Hasta, are we on a ghost ship? Audrey showed a little fear on her face, but her tone was very excited. Almost. Hasta looked at the direction the ship was heading, north, towards the remains of the mined dragon. I heard that there is also a ghost ship on the sea? Audrey and Susie looked at Hasta with curious eyes, wanting him to tell stories and legends about the sea. Hasta sat down at the bow of the ship, leaning against a mast. He arched his right leg and flattened his left leg before slowly speaking. There is indeed a ghost ship. It is called the Blue Avenger. The captain was a man named Alger Wilson. I heard that Captain Alger Wilson has some elven blood and dark blue hair. He is an experienced, calm and sophisticated adventurer, and has a certain reputation among pirates.
After hearing this, a general image emerged in Audrey's mind, Mr. Hanged Man.
In her mind, Mr. Hanged Man fit the description given by Mr. Hester of Captain Alger Wilson.
As Hester told some related deeds, the image of Mr. Hanged Man in Audrey's mind became more and more full, and then the two images completely overlapped.
Could it be that Mr. Hanged Man is Captain Alger Wilson? Audrey had some guesses in her mind and had the urge to reveal the true identity of Mr. Hanged Man in a tarot meeting. Besides ghost ships, what other interesting legends are there on the sea? Audrey came to the other side of the mast, tightened her skirt first, and then imitated Hester's sitting posture and slowly sat down. Susie chose to lie next to Audrey, closing her eyes but keeping her ears open. Listen carefully to Hester's mysterious legends about the sea. In order to satisfy Audrey and Susie's thirst for knowledge, Hester broke apart the legend of the treasure in the sea, and then told it through his storytelling ability. Audrey and Susie would scream and bark from time to time. When the third story of the Kingdom of Giants was told, the ship that had been sailing on the sea stopped.
Our destination has arrived. Hester stood up, then leaned down slightly and stretched out his right arm to let Audrey use her strength to stand up. Susie stood up with golden hair all over her body.
The two people and the dog came to the bow of the ship, and saw a large whirlpool with a diameter of several kilometers suddenly appeared on the flat sea ahead. At this moment, it was running non-stop, pulling the ship in a circle into its central area.
The ship gradually began to rock, and Audrey subconsciously grabbed Hester's arm. Susie lay on the deck, stretching out her front paws to hold Hester's right foot tightly to prevent her small body from being thrown away. Fortunately, this is the spiritual world, and the movement of ships attracted by the whirlpool is not as scary as the real world. The ship did not disintegrate, but continued to sink into the depths of the sea along the edge of the whirlpool.
The scene of being swallowed by the sea did not come. Hester and others first passed through a dark and lightless world, and then gradually returned to brightness. The sea turned into a pure white world in front of them.
There is no dome above, no ground below, only countless light spots constantly flying up and down. The entire ship seems to be wrapped in a huge transparent bubble, floating forward slowly.
So beautiful. Audrey couldn't hide her joy. This was the first time she had encountered such a fantasy world full of fairy tale colors. Woof! Even Susie opened her eyes wide and looked at the outside world with curiosity. After Hester admired this beautiful scene for a while, he turned his attention to the light spots flying around. He could vaguely see sections of pictures flickering in the light spots. This is not an ordinary light spot, but the light of memory that carries the memory of the spiritual dragon's life. As the ship continued to go deeper into this pure white world, the memory spots flying outside gradually became sparse. The huge body of a spiritual dragon began to appear in the field of vision. Its body is made up of pure light points, and at this moment, the light points are continuously scattered from its body. The mind dragon in front of him was as huge as a mountain range. It just lay in the void. Its closed eyelids trembled slightly, as if it wanted to open its eyes, but it lacked enough strength to help it complete this simple little action. The life of the mind dragon was about to come to an end. Perhaps it had already died. It was just the last picture left here before its death. When these memory spots completely dissipated, there would be no trace of its existence in this world. Woof! Susie jumped up, stretched out her two front paws and closed them to grab a memory spot, but the spot went straight through her palm and slipped out, leaving Susie empty-handed. Are these memories also illusory? Audrey murmured, and waved to Susie, signaling her to calm down and not disturb the sleep of the mind dragon in front of her. The atmosphere was heavy, like the dead silence after the autumn leaves turned yellow. Audrey seemed to see herself getting old in an instant. At that time, her hair was gray, dull and dry, far less smooth and dazzling than when she was young. Her face was full of wrinkles, her hands and feet were difficult to control, and her eyes, which were like gemstones, were gradually replaced by turbidity and yellowing. Old and fading, lonely and desolate, is this the portrayal of her old age? Susie seemed to see her future old age. When she was old, Audrey would be in the most dazzling years of her life. Lying in the doghouse, it wanted to open its eyes and lick Audrey's palm that was stretched to its mouth, but it couldn't do it. It was so old that it couldn't even open its mouth. its teeth were almost falling out, and its golden hair became dry and yellow, and fell off seriously, especially its tail was bald. Woo woo woo. Susie sobbed sadly. Asta also saw his old age in an instant, but he didn't care. That is the old age of ordinary people, not his old age, nor will it be the old age of Audrey and Susie. When the promotion sequence is higher, the years and lifespan will gradually lose their effect. If you are promoted to a sequence 0 true god, as long as you don't die due to an accident, the passage of time is just a breeze without any waves. Hasta retracted his gaze from the mind dragon and turned to look at Audrey and Susie. Audrey, who has always been elegant and noble, rarely showed a fragile posture like crystal glass at this moment. Her brows were tightly knitted, tears were slightly in her eyes, and her thin lips were bitten lightly, as if she was experiencing something heart-wrenching and painful. Susie was lying on the ground, with her two front paws on her eyes, wiping away the tears that flowed from excessive sadness from time to time. Suppressed sobs made the scene even more sad. Hasta looked carefully for a while and did not disturb Audrey and Susie from indulging in their own miserable old age. This was also a rare experience. After a long time, Audrey and Susie finally came out of that state of twilight. Susie stared blankly at her wet front paws, then as if she had thought of something, she suddenly climbed up and secretly looked at Asta and Audrey. Seeing that Asta didn't look at this side, Audrey was also in a daze. She hurriedly turned her back and rubbed her two front paws wet by tears a few times, trying to remove the traces left by the tears. Audrey also had a similar reaction. She was stunned at first, and then woke up. She also secretly looked at Asta and Susie, then turned her back, wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, and tried to look natural and decent. It was just that the small ears were stained with a layer of crimson, which had betrayed her true feelings. "Well, Mr. Asta, did anything happen just now?" Audrey turned around with a calm and curious expression on her face. "Don't worry, I didn't see anything just now." Asta deliberately mentioned it. Audrey's cheeks flushed instantly, like a passing red cloud. Susie also turned her back silently, then lay down with her eyes closed and pretended to sleep. "Mr. Asta, you clearly did it on purpose." Audrey tried to overcome her shyness and confusion, and then glared at Asta. "What do you mean by not seeing it? If she really didn't see it, she wouldn't have said this." Mr. Asta must have seen her pitiful appearance with tears in her eyes just now. After a long while, Audrey gradually regained her usual calm and elegance, and looked at the mind dragon in front of her with curiosity. Its eyelids barely lifted a corner, revealing an eyeball carved like a white crystal. Following its gaze, it was staring at Susie, who was lying down pretending to sleep. Could it be that it fell in love with Susie? Not long after Audrey had this thought, two memory light spots that were obviously several times larger flew out of the mind dragon's eyes, slowly but firmly merging into Susie's body. Woof! Susie, who had closed her eyes and pretended to sleep, jumped up instantly, a foot high, and looked around with panicked eyes, as if she had just had a terrible nightmare. The mind dragon, which sent out two memory light spots, closed its eyes again. This time, even its eyelids could not tremble. The mind dragon, which was completely exhausted, emitted a surge of memory light spots in an instant, and the entire pure white world in front of it was wrapped in memory light spots. Amid the rain of memory light spots, Audrey and Hasta each received a memory fragment sent by the mind dragon. I couldn't help but close my eyes and enter that memory fragment. Woof! Susie curiously circled around Audrey and Hasta, but she soon yawned and couldn't control her sleepiness, so she fell asleep on the deck. When she closed her eyes for the last time, she saw the psychic dragon flying towards her. It was a descendant of the fantasy dragon Angerweed several generations ago. It did not become the means of resurrection of the fantasy dragon Angerweed like its ancestor. When it was born, the fantasy dragon Angerweed had already fallen early, and it had only seen his child Asulehad from a distance. Later, with the outbreak of the God War and the change of eras, the era of the psychic dragon was gone. In order not to be hunted, it carefully hid in the collective subconscious of the villagers in a small village that was almost isolated from the world. It successfully survived the Third Age Cataclysm era, and it was not until the end of the Fourth Age Gods era that it completely fell in this small village. With its death, the village centered on it quickly declined due to natural disasters and man-made disasters, and finally became a deserted wilderness. After its fall, its spiritual world gradually emerged from the sea of subconsciousness. The last time Audrey strayed in was because its spiritual world was about to collapse and leaked power. It was truly dead, dying on the road of being unable to be promoted to a higher sequence. It was only a sequence 3 dream weaver until its death, so it used its remaining power to arrange this pure white space. Waiting for the right successor to enter here. The successor it originally wanted to wait for was other spiritual dragons, but a long time passed. No other spiritual dragon stepped into this place, and it thought that perhaps it was the last living spiritual dragon in the world. Originally, its consciousness had long since disappeared, but because of its arrival, it suddenly revived and awakened the last bit of consciousness. In order not to miss the opportunity given by the stars, it used up its last consciousness to guide Audrey and Susie to come. Finally, it chose Susie as its successor, and left all the knowledge about the lineage of the psychic dragon and all its memories of this life to Susie. When Hasta saw this, his face was a little strange, and he glanced at Audrey without leaving a trace. I'm afraid Audrey doesn't know that she lost to Susie in this competition for successor. But think about it carefully, if I were this psychic dragon, between Audrey and Susie, I should also choose Susie as my successor. After all, most psychic dragons don't have much good feelings for the emerging humans behind. On this road of human extraordinary rise, the blood and brain of the psychic dragon are absolutely indispensable. In the last memory left by this psychic dragon, it left 2 extraordinary items that it had collected for a long time to itself. Audrey should also have received part of the psychic dragon's gift, although it is far less than Susie's gains. Seeing that Audrey was still immersed in the memory of the mind dragon, Hasta reached out and touched the 2 extraordinary items that had floated in front of him. One was a palm-sized gray-white scale, which should be a scale that fell off a mind dragon, and it might be the most critical reverse scale. The other extraordinary item was a mercury badge. Hasta carefully identified the patterns on it and found that it should be a holy emblem symbolizing knowledge and wisdom. Could it be an item left behind by the Dragon of Wisdom Herbergen? This mind dragon was able to collect such extraordinary items, and its origin was definitely not simple. Unfortunately, it seemed to deliberately hide the traces of its existence and was unwilling to leave even a name. Hasta put away the 2 extraordinary items, because the mind dragon had sealed them separately, so there was no need to worry about their negative effects without breaking the seal. After waiting patiently for a while, Audrey also woke up from the memory left by the mind dragon. Her face was full of joy, and her eyebrows couldn't help but rise slightly. After sorting out her thoughts, Audrey excitedly told Hasta what she had just gained. Compared to the 2 extraordinary items Hasta had obtained, what she had obtained was the knowledge of the mind dragon, the extraordinary knowledge about the audience path. From sequence 9 audience to sequence 3 dream weaver. For her, this is the greatest wealth. Susie, hasn't it woken up yet? After being happy, Audrey looked at Susie with worry in her eyes. Hasta comforted. Don't worry, Susie is just like you. She fell asleep because she couldn't receive too much knowledge for a while. Audrey looked at Hasta in a daze. Susie also accepted the gift of this mind dragon. Hasta did not directly tell Susie that she had obtained the complete inheritance of the mind dragon. He had to choose a suitable opportunity. I really look forward to Audrey's expression after hearing the news, especially when she knew that she was eliminated by Susie. If Susie did not follow into the mind world tonight, then the last heir of the mind dragon would only be Audrey. How long do we need to wait? Audrey leaned over and gently stroked Susie's head. It depends on Susie's learning ability. The faster she absorbs knowledge, the easier it is for her to wake up. Hasta gave his professional judgment. According to his estimation, Susie would have to sleep for 3 to 5 days after returning to the real world to fully absorb this large memory. With Hasta's assurance, Audrey's worries were slightly reduced. After confirming that Susie was fine, she looked at the place where the mind dragon disappeared and bowed deeply, with a sense of loss and a hint of sadness on her face. Great creatures like mind dragons are almost extinct in the real world. Witnessing their demise with one's own eyes, there is a desolate feeling of witnessing the fall of a legend. Perhaps we really need to establish a Dragon Protection Association in the future. Asta's teasing words instantly dispelled Audrey's sadness, and she couldn't help but smile and said, "When I go back, I will do my best to promote this matter." The purpose of the association is to find and protect the few remaining dragons in the world.
Audrey thought for a while and said, well, can giants also be included in the protection scope? Giant and Dragon Protection Association. And elves. Asta reminded on the side. Yes, and there are cute elves. Audrey's eyes lit up. Then it's called the Legendary Creature Protection Association.
Legendary Creature Protection Association? Asta also silently repeated it twice and suggested, wouldn't it be better to call it the Magical Creature Protection Association? Audrey thought seriously for 2 seconds and rejected the proposal.
If it is called the Magical Creature Protection Association, then the scope included is too broad, and the number of legendary creatures is relatively rare.
And magical creatures are not enough to describe giants, dragons, elves and other intelligent creatures that existed in the mythological era. Every existence that can live to the present world is a legend.
While Audrey and Hasta were chatting, the ship had automatically turned around, leaving this pure white space on the verge of destruction and reappearing on the vast Sea of Soul.
What a wonderful adventure! Audrey stood at the bow, feeling the breeze, looking at the lonely islands of the soul floating on the Sea of Soul, and couldn't help but exclaim.
This is what makes the extraordinary world fascinating. It will always give you unforgettable memories in a lifetime at some inadvertent moment.
Hasta stood beside Audrey and expressed his heartfelt feelings.
Mr. Hasta, I'm glad you accompany me on the adventure. Audrey whispered softly. If she was alone, it would definitely not be so smooth.
And how can one person's happiness compare to two people's?
I should thank Miss Audrey for the invitation. Is Mr. Hasta's life in South Wales so colorful?
There are no psychic dragons in South Wales, but I have seen the legendary phoenix. Phoenix? Does this legendary creature really exist? Well, they are rarer than dragons. Hasta has seen the elves? I think I will have a chance to meet them in the future. That's great. I also want to go out on an adventure and explore the unknown left over from ancient history. When the ship crossed the Sea of Mind and docked, Susie was still sleeping. Audrey stared at Susie for a long time before looking at Hasta with a meaningful look. Hasta looked at Susie's not-so-small physique, sighed, squatted down and picked Susie up with both hands. Fortunately, except for the fluffy hair, it was not very heavy, only about 20 pounds.
It's suitable. After Audrey said this, she turned her back, and her slightly trembling shoulders betrayed her little action of laughing.
In fact, in this dream world, everything does not need to follow the rules outside.
For example, Hasta can use a rope to tie Susie and let Susie fly in the air like a balloon.
But that scene is too conspicuous. The speed of returning along the original route is much faster than before. Soon, Audrey and Hasta passed the Wishing Lake again. The lake water that suddenly disappeared once again filled the empty pit.
Audrey came to the lake and called the elves in the lake softly to see if she would follow the lake back again.
After calling for almost 4 or 5 times, the calm lake finally stirred up waves, and the lake elves emerged from the depths of the lake. She first glanced at Audrey and Hasta curiously, then looked down at her current situation, and thought for a while with her chin supported by her little hand, and she actually flew out of the lake. It was like a miniature elf flying back and forth in the air. She flew from the lake to the top of the forest, swooped down, flew past the ground, and then made another beautiful turn. Her body pulled up again, and stopped steadily in front of Audrey's head. The ground seemed to be awakened in the place where she passed just now, and green and tender grass grew. The originally dark and dead forest now had a breath of life. "Can you leave the lake?" Audrey asked curiously, and then stretched out her right index finger, wanting to touch the small elf. But before her fingers touched it, the lake elf laughed, flapped its wings, and sank back into the lake, leaving only a small head. "I have a name, Moira." The lake elf smiled and said, "Next time you come, you can call my name." As he said that, the body of the lake elf completely merged into the lake, and then the lake in front of him disappeared again. "Moira, Moira." Audrey repeated it several times, with a sweet smile on her delicate face. She liked this fairy tale development very much. On the way out of the Wishing Lake, Audrey kept a very good mood, just humming a little song and dancing. When she returned to the Silver Tower, Audrey stretched out her fingers and gently poked Susie's head, who was still sleeping, a few times. I told you not to follow, but you insisted on following. If Mr. Asta hadn't brought you back this time, I would definitely leave you on the boat to fend for yourself."
Audrey said seemingly ruthless words, but she couldn't help but worry about Susie's condition.
I couldn't help but ask Asta about Susie's specific situation. Audrey, are you sure you want to know why Susie has been sleeping?
Asta felt that he was still very kind, at least giving Audrey a chance to choose.
Is there anything wrong with Susie's situation? Audrey suddenly had a bad premonition in her heart.
You received the knowledge of the psychic dragon. I got 2 extraordinary items left by it, and Susie also got a gift belonging to it.
What gift? Audrey suddenly didn't want to ask this question. Between you and Susie, the psychic dragon finally chose Susie to inherit all its memories. This not only contains the extraordinary knowledge of the audience path, but also the blood inheritance of the dragon clan, which means that Susie is the last heir chosen by the psychic dragon. Asta's light words easily broke Audrey's worry and heartache for Susie.
Now, Audrey felt even more distressed for herself, because the clown turned out to be herself.
I actually lost to Susie without knowing it. No wonder Susie has such a strong learning ability, but has been sleeping until now. It turns out that it is because she has received too much knowledge and memory. The most important thing is, once Susie wakes up, she will receive the memory and knowledge of the mind dragon for a lifetime. How much knowledge and wisdom will she show? Perhaps, Susie can be her teacher at that time. When Audrey thought of the scene of Susie wearing gold-rimmed glasses and patiently popularizing extraordinary knowledge to her, both sides of her cheeks felt hot. Mr. Asta, is it too late for me to throw Susie away now? After leaving the dream world, Susie was still sleeping, completely unaware that she was almost abandoned by Audrey just now. Alas! Audrey, lying on the bed, turned sideways, looked at Susie who was sleeping soundly in the doghouse, and sighed heavily again. She couldn't sleep tonight anyway. As soon as she closed her eyes, her mind was full of the scene of Susie teaching her extraordinary knowledge. As time gradually approached the day of George III's national speech, the situation in Backland became more and more turbulent, chaotic and dangerous. Pedestrians who got up early in the morning often saw a strange corpse suddenly appearing in the trash can deep in the alley. The stray dogs and cats living in the dark corners also grew significantly during that period, and they were even too lazy to look at the bread drop next to the trash can. The local police department had to spend a lot of energy just to deal with the new strange corpses every day, which led to some hooligans or gangs taking advantage of the opportunity to fish in troubled waters and cause a lot of trouble. Klein, who had been hiding in the dark, would observe Melissa's movements from time to time. In such a chaotic situation, various security incidents occurred frequently. In order to save some money, Melissa basically walked to school every time. This made her easily targeted by criminals, who like to abduct and kidnap innocent girls the most. In the past few days, Klein has secretly helped Melissa drive away 2 waves of malicious criminals. Originally, the local police would take special care of Benson and Melissa. This was instructed by the Church of the Night, but the recent situation was chaotic and the police force was seriously insufficient, which allowed some malicious criminals to take advantage of the situation. Although Klein had some complaints about this, he could generally understand it. He thought that if the situation in Backland continued to be so chaotic, in order to ensure the safety of Benson and Melissa, he would use Will's ability to send a dream to Leonard and ask him to take good care of Benson and Melissa. At night, after Klein confirmed that Benson and Melissa were resting, he left the room, changed his new identity, and went to attend an extraordinary party. This is a newly emerged extraordinary party mainly for exchanging intelligence. If you need to trade, you can also do it on the spot. The convener of the extraordinary party is not a certain Mr., not a member of the Aurora Society, but a mysterious lady who is covered tightly and is said to be a believer of the stars. Klein came here for this reason. He has always been very interested in the Star Organization, and always felt that their organization was somewhat similar to his tarot club. They are both the most watched and newly emerged extraordinary organizations in Backland recently. The location of the extraordinary gathering tonight is in an abandoned warehouse near the River Bay Avenue between the South Bridge District and the Dock District. When Klein disguised his identity and appearance and arrived at the extraordinary gathering place tonight, there were already more than a dozen figures here. A dim chandelier was lit in the center of the warehouse, and other areas were shrouded in darkness. The focus covered by the light was the convener of the extraordinary gathering tonight. She was wearing a tightly wrapped black robe, a hood similar to that of a magician, and a black scarf on her face. A faint mist covered her true face.
She could only be judged from the sound of her voice and the curves of her body that were revealed that she should be a lady.
Of course, Klein did not rule out that this was a man. After all, the extraordinary world is always full of unexpected things. It was just that the figure of this lady and the feeling she gave him were a little inexplicably familiar. Could it be that he had seen her before? Klein suppressed his speculation and found a quiet place where he could hear the mysterious lady's voice clearly. He had participated in this gathering once. It seemed that there was a powerful extraordinary person watching here. So no matter where the extraordinary people came from, as long as they did not cause trouble, they could come to the gathering, and there was no threshold at all. In 3 days, it will be the time when King George III of Lowen will give a national speech. At that time, the entire backland will usher in the most chaotic moment. Even if you have never participated in it, as long as you are in backland, you will inevitably be affected. Seeing that the number of people was almost the same, the mysterious lady in the center position, who was watched by everyone, finally spoke, and the first sentence aroused everyone's curiosity. Klein's heart moved slightly. The other party deliberately emphasized George III's national speech. Did she also know that George III wanted to become a god on this day? Then what was her purpose? Soon, someone asked hoarsely. George III is just an ordinary person. Even if he is the king, how can he affect the extraordinary world? The mysterious lady replied calmly. What if George III is also an extraordinary person? In the dark shadows, another person spoke. Under the strict supervision of the Church of the Night, the Church of the Storm, and the Church of Steam and Machinery, does George III dare to violate the ban so blatantly? Isn't the ban meant to be broken? The mysterious lady seemed to chuckle. But what does this have to do with us? Someone asked in the dark. This is a question you need to think about. I just share some information, but some information is not free to share. I can only say that the true face hidden by George III is far beyond your imagination. The mysterious lady's words stopped at the point, but gave people a lot of room for imagination. Past gatherings have proved that what the mysterious lady said is correct, and this time will be no exception. Klein has been sure that the other party must know the news that George III is going to become a god, and he is not on good terms with George III. Otherwise, she would not let George III become the focus of everyone's attention at this critical moment. Her goal should be the same as mine, both of which are to prevent George III from becoming a god. It seems that the master behind this extraordinary party is Bernadette. Klein quickly sorted out these things in his mind, and at the same time he breathed a sigh of relief. Bernadette has already started to act, which will undoubtedly increase the hope of stopping George III from becoming a god. You are so presumptuous, don't you take the Lowen royal family too seriously? Someone in the shadows spoke with obvious suppressed anger. Just by listening to this kind of speech, Klein guessed that the other party was a Beyander from the Lowen royal family. Before the mysterious lady could speak, someone secretly said sinisterly, if George III really sneaked into the Beyander world, then did he take the 3 major churches seriously? After saying this, he added, or was George III's behavior of exceeding the ban tacitly approved by the 3 major churches? This remark made the questioner who had suppressed his anger just now speechless instantly. No matter how bold he was, he dared not disrespect the 3 major churches. As far as I know, the 3 major churches don't know about this, let alone tacitly allow it to happen. Someone secretly spoke in the dark. Klein guessed that this person might be a member of the 3 major churches, and that he said this to help the 3 major churches clear the suspicion of collusion with George III. People from the Lowen royal family, wild extraordinary people, believers from the 3 major churches, spies from other countries, members of other extraordinary organizations. Now Klein truly understood why this extraordinary gathering was open to everyone. The purpose was to get all parties involved and then muddy the waters. Can Bernadette alone shock this place? He heard a lot of legends about this mysterious queen on the sea. According to his estimation, Bernadette's strength should be around sequence 3. With such strength, plus the bounties from various countries on her, why did she dare to act like this in Backland? Because of the stars? Klein's heart sank slightly, and he didn't think about this question anymore, and continued to be a bystander. In just half an hour, Klein gained a lot of the latest information about Backland. Someone even directly revealed the identity of a spy from Fussek in public. The person who had spoken for the Lowen royal family was also exposed by the people hiding in the dark.
As the organizer, the mysterious lady did not stop these people from exposing each other's secrets. Instead, she watched all this with interest.
When this extraordinary gathering tonight was coming to an end, the mysterious lady spoke again. Tonight is the last gathering. I hope everyone here can have a good mood in the next few days. After that, a door opened behind the mysterious lady, and she disappeared under the gaze of everyone. Portal? The extraordinary ability of the apprentice path is really useful. Klein also witnessed the scene of the mysterious lady leaving, thinking that when he was promoted to Sequence 5 Secret Master in the future, he must find an extraordinary person of the apprentice path to make a secret doll.
This way, he can return to Backland from the sea at any time, which is also very good for escaping.
After a little envy, Klein quietly left the gathering place. After returning to his home, first took off the tightly wrapped black robe, took off the hood, pulled open the face towel, sat on the sofa, drank a glass of warm water, and finally breathed a sigh of relief.
During this period, she had been following the request of the Sage Lord and went to host extraordinary gatherings. She had to face so many eyes every night, and occasionally act as bait, which was really unbearable for her.
Fortunately, tonight was the last time. Next, she could rest at home and no longer need to go out to do things. You're back? Look at you. It's like you just experienced a life and death battle. Shu came out of the room and sat next to Furs, playing with the black robe and hood she took off, and then folded them and put them aside.
Anyway, my mission is over, but how is your progress in finding out the news? Furs had already started to lie down, and even her voice became weak.
It's going well. The next few days are the most critical and chaotic time. The wise man said that I can stay at home with you to prevent you from being lonely. Furs curled his lips and said, "You're lonely. I wish you were not at home." Hee, a woman who says one thing and means another. Shu came over and started tickling Furs. The two laughed and played for a while, and Furs received a picture from Mr. Fool in his mind. It was a picture of a devout believer praying to Mr. Fool. Wait, stop it, I have something to deal with. Furs raised her upper body and reached out to stop Hugh's playfulness. Looking at Furs's solemn face, Hugh stopped playing, loosened her arms around Furs' waist, and whispered, "Did anything big happen?" "I guess." Furs couldn't tell Hugh directly that she was an undercover agent in the Tarot Club. She tidied up her messy clothes and got up to return to her room. Alas, the stars seemed to love Furs especially. Hugh sighed, and then she imitated Furs's posture just now, lying comfortably on the sofa, closing her eyes and thinking about the next few days for herself and Furs. The sage has to do something big in the next few days and can't be distracted, so she and Furs can only protect themselves. The most likely enemy is the group of people who caused Furs to be deeply polluted last time. They may take this opportunity to attack herself and Furs. If I can be promoted faster. Shu thought for a moment and sighed heavily.
In the room, Furs, who was alone, came to look through the video that Mr. Fool had just sent.
It was a man whose face could not be seen clearly, probably Mr. World. He was praying to Mr. Fool, saying that he also wanted to deal with George III, and that he wanted to cooperate with the mysterious Queen Bernadette. Mysterious Queen Bernadette? Furs felt a little confused. She had seen the introduction of this legendary figure in Shu's bounty encyclopedia. Her bounty alone was more than £1 million from all countries. This was one of Shu's fantasy objects. She had always imagined that she could make a fortune and earn enough pounds that she could not spend in her lifetime. Mr. Fool's followers wanted to find the mysterious Queen Bernadette, so why did Mr. Fool show this video to herself? She didn't know the mysterious Queen Bernadette. She was a pirate leader and had no intersection with her at all. Wait a minute, with Mr. Fool's wisdom, he would not do such a thing for no reason. Could it be that the sage is the mysterious Queen Bernadette? Furs was also shocked by her own guess, but after thinking carefully, she knew only a few female extraordinary people, and the only one who could be called a big shot was the sage who suddenly came to Backland. Yes, there is only this possibility. Furs has thus confirmed the true identity of the sage. If Zio knew that the moving gold pound she had been thinking about was the sage, how would she feel? Furs quickly suppressed this thought and shifted her attention to this matter. It seems that Mr. Fool also acquiesced to deal with George III? The Fool and the stars joined forces. Furs' eyes brightened.
She is both a believer in the stars and a member of the Tarot Club. If she facilitates this matter, wouldn't she be able to get two different benefits at the same time?
Moreover, this is such a fulfilling thing. After thinking carefully for a while, first prayed to Mr. Fool and expressed her opinion. She just said that she would try her best to help Mr. Fool's followers to make this happen. Above the gray fog, Klein, who was sitting at the head of the bronze long table, heard the answer from Miss Magician and was truly sure that she was the mysterious lady at the extraordinary party tonight.
He had originally wanted to cooperate with Bernadette, and with his suspicion of Miss Magician tonight, he tried to confirm Miss Magician's identity through this method.
Sure enough, the big shot she knew was the mysterious Queen Bernadette.
After about half an hour, Klein received another prayer from Furs.
Mysterious Queen Bernadette has agreed to cooperate. She will wait at Bellrand Bridge tomorrow night. Klein controlled his body again and gave an answer. Thank you, Miss Magician, for helping to facilitate this deal. I'm willing to pay a certain amount of compensation. The details can be discussed at the Tarot Club. Furs was very satisfied with this reply. When she went to the sage to verify and report this news just now, the sage gave her a certain reward and could give her one of the extraordinary materials required for promotion to Sequence 6 Recorder. The cooperation between the stars and the Fool is completed just like that? Furs, who was alone in the room, blinked and felt that what happened tonight was too smooth, and she, as the middleman, didn't need to do much. Maybe the stars and the Fool really know each other, and this is the tacit understanding between them. Furs stayed in the room for a while before opening the door and going out to show off a little to Hugh, who was occupying her sofa.
Especially the fact that the sage was the mysterious Queen Bernadette. When Furs saw that Hugh's little mouth was open as wide as she thought, she was in a good mood.
Klein finally sought cooperation with Bernadette, and fortunately, he was just in time. Austin naturally learned the news at the first time. For his first cooperation with Mr. Fool, he was thinking about whether to go to the spirit world to give Mr. Fool a shock. No, a surprise. It's time to lay bare our cards to Mr. Fool. This will be beneficial for possible cooperation in the future. Maybe we can take this opportunity to bring Mr. Fool to the Hall of Stars. But his identity is difficult to deal with. If Mr. Fool goes to the Hall of Stars as the Lord of Mysteries and appears in front of the Jinn, the Mother Tree of Desire, the Superstar Lord, and the High-Dimensional Overlooker, it will definitely cause an uproar.
It's not yet time for a complete showdown. Well, you can also communicate privately and avoid the days when the stars gather together. Hastur imagined that he was sitting in the Palace of Stars and Klein was sitting on the Origin Castle. The scene of the two chatting and bluffing each other was quite interesting. The stars and the Fool, two paper tigers, only look swollen on the surface and lifelike because they can blow air. However, if the paper is damaged and the air leaks out with a light poke, there will only be a painting left. The tiger's skin is gone. The next night, Klein disguised himself as a new person and appeared at the Belland Bridge. After waiting for a while, P-vines rose from the ground and led him to the clouds in midair. The Bernadette in front of her was wearing an Intis-style lady's white shirt, sitting quietly at a rattan table. Her long chestnut hair was naturally hanging down. She actually had the temperament of a professional woman on Earth, and she was in a high position, of that kind. It fits the image of domineering female presidents in many urban novels. It seems that Emperor Russell had a great influence on Bernadette's growth. Your disguise is very good, and you still have a strong aura of destiny on your body. It's the aura of the Mercury Snake. You must be one of the school of life. Bernadette's calm eyes seemed to see through everything, easily breaking through Klein's many disguises. Klein just smiled and didn't answer. He did ask Will to help a little. After all, the other person was the mysterious Queen Bernadette. Although they share the same goal, there is still a certain level of caution. Speaking of which, a person like Emperor Russell could give birth to such an elegant and noble daughter, which is true to the famous saying that good bamboo shoots will come from bad bamboo. Klein suppressed these thoughts in his heart to avoid being noticed by Bernadette in front of him. I'm just here to cooperate in dealing with George III. Klein stated his position again. Did the Fool ask you to come? He, like the stars, acquiesces in our respective actions. George III, it turns out he is so unpopular, Bernadette chuckled mockingly. Klein originally wanted to say, Emperor Russell once said this. If you are in good faith, you will get many help, but if you are in bad faith, you will get little help.
But considering that the other party is Russell's daughter, it would be embarrassing if she insisted that Russell didn't say this. On the contrary, it will only increase the risk of your own exposure. He could only change his words and say, when George III chose his allies, his enemies were also determined. Bernadette glanced at Klein and said, we have made a lot of preparations to deal with George III, and have identified the 4 mausoleums that George III built in Backland. When Bernadette said this, she paused to see how many tombs the Tarot Society organization represented by Klein wanted to be responsible for. Since it is an equal cooperation, then both parties will be responsible for 2 tombs respectively. Klein said calmly. Taking charge of 2 mausoleums is already his biggest limit at present. Miss Messenger can take charge of one of the mausoleums, and she can cooperate with Mr. Azek to protect and take charge of the other mausoleum, which is just right. If there was another one, he would have to separate from Mr. Azek, which would undoubtedly put himself in a dangerous situation. But trying to prevent George III from becoming a god is inherently risky. Since he decided to stop it, he would not shrink back because of difficulties. Bernadette glanced at Klein thoughtfully, indicating that she approved of his proposal. Bernadette then drew a map in the void and told Klein the locations of the 2 tombs. At the same time, she gave Klein the methods and blood needed to break the seal on the door. Hey, the texture pattern required for this method is the same as what Will told himself. Klein couldn't help but murmur in his heart. The 3 major churches acted very quickly. After learning that George III might be hiding his identity as an extraordinary, after a brief discussion, they sent people to the palace and asked an archbishop to come forward to personally inspect George III. The final conclusion was that George III was just an ordinary person, not a powerful extraordinary person. After George III suppressed his anger and politely sent the people from the 3 major churches away, his eyes could not help but flash with sinister and angry eyes. Check. Send someone to find out who is secretly targeting me. George III suppressed his anger and ordered those around him to investigate the matter. Although he survived this time without any risk, if such things spread, his prestige as a king would be trampled on by the 3 major churches again. His prestige and his kingdom are destined to become only the foil and puppet of the 3 major churches. Only by successfully being promoted to the sequence 0 Black Emperor and becoming a true god can he be qualified to be on an equal footing with the 3 major churches. There is no need to waste manpower on investigating. Bernadette is secretly fueling this matter. She already knows that you want to attack the Black Emperor and has begun to try to stop you. A figure suddenly appeared in the palace, half hidden in the corner to the right of George III. Even the 3 major churches are not sure about such a top-secret matter. So how does Bernadette know? George III frowned slightly. Haha, she is a believer in the stars. The man said, and chuckled. Russell was a fierce jumper to the Black Emperor path. As his child, Bernadette naturally knows the secrets of the Black Emperor path. Stars. George III recited silently several times and snorted in anger. Don't worry and be prepared. If you miss this opportunity, you will never be able to make even half a step forward. George III nodded silently and thought of another thing. Have the people from the Aurora Society decided not to participate in this matter? They backed away from the last big smog incident, and this time they broke the contract temporarily. It's really hateful. This should be a good thing for you. Those crazy people can easily attract unnecessary attention to you. George III said nothing more, but looked towards the starry sky above his head, where a kingdom belonging to him would rise. After finishing his conversation with Bernadette, Klein returned to his residence and carefully wrote another line of small words on a paper crane that was almost full. The next time you see Will, be sure to ask him for a new paper crane, preferably a bunch. This will save you from having to write a brief content each time. Klein whispered and lay down, falling asleep in bed. Not long after, Will appeared in his dream, yawning and holding a maroon bear toy. Really, you always come to me when I'm just sleeping, don't you know how to respect the old and love the young? I have both, Will muttered dissatisfied and glanced at Klein. Tell me, this what happened again? I want you to help me give Leonard a dream. This is a solution that Klein has been thinking about for a long time. He will be busy dealing with George III's affairs next and really has no free time to protect Melissa secretly. Leonard is the best person to solve this matter.
It's very simple to tell dreams, but you should also know that Leonard has something special inside him, and it's very likely that he will find some clues.
It's okay if I really can't hide it. Let Leonard know that I'm still alive and it will make it easier for him to trouble him in the future. Klein didn't care too much about this issue. His fake death was just a temporary measure. And even if Leonard knew about it, he could find an excuse to be seriously injured and on the verge of death, and then recuperate outside.
After all, he was probably the only survivor of what happened in Banksea Port.
That's it, okay. Will narrowed his eyes as if he thought of something fun. Klein saw Will's little thoughts and warned, be careful, don't go too far. Don't worry, there is absolutely no one better at telling dreams than me. Will smiled with his eyebrows creasing. Klein could only pray to Leonard in his heart, hoping that his heart would be strong enough. At 3 or 4 o'clock in the night, Leonard, who was sleeping soundly in bed, suddenly had a dream.
The world in the dream is a sea, with gray mist floating on the sea, and visibility is very low. Vaguely, he saw what seemed to be a port on the sea ahead, and he subconsciously drifted in that direction.
But before he could get close to the port, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky, a rumble of explosions resounded through the sky, and streaks of purple, white, or red lightning engulfed everything in front of him.
Even his eyes narrowed subconsciously to avoid being dazzled by the strong lightning.
After the thunder dissipated, the port in front of them dissipated immediately, which had been completely reduced to ashes, leaving only a little smoke that had not yet been burned out. Leonard drifted toward the destroyed port out of curiosity. The temperature around him was getting colder and colder for some reason, making him want to shiver. Woo! The cold wind blowing around seemed like someone was crying.
The sound reached his ears, scratching his heart.
As he approached the port, ghosts of the dead appeared in the mist. They were lining up and floating in the same direction. At this moment, a bloody figure with one arm and one leg missing, disheveled hair, and blood all over his body suddenly emerged from the sea. Just like that, he suddenly appeared in front of him, only 1 meter away from him. Leonard's breathing was instantly rapid, his eyes widened, and he felt that his heartbeat had missed half a beat, and then it was pounding rapidly.
He tried to calm himself down, telling himself again and again in his heart that this was just his dream, not real. Leonard, I died so miserably, so miserably. A familiar voice stained with resentment and desolation came from the mouth of the corpse in front of him that could hardly be called complete.
He repeated it over and over again, and the surrounding sea surface was covered with a layer of frost because of his voice.
Leonard carefully identified it for a while, and said uncertainly, are you Klein? It's me, Leonard, I died so miserably, so miserably.
The figure in front of him who claimed to be Klein pulled away the messy hair on his face, revealing a pair of empty, black eyes without eyeballs. Ah! Leonard was so scared that he subconsciously took a step back and almost fell on the sea. Klein, is it really you? Are you here to tell me something in my dream?
Klein's empty eyes kept staring at Leonard until his scalp was almost numb. Klein suddenly stretched out his only remaining hand and pinched his neck.
Then, under Leonard's panicked gaze, Klein smiled sinisterly, and the corners of his mouth split a little bit to the sides, like a bloody crack in hell. Help me take good care of Benson and Melissa, ah. Leonard was so scared that he exited the dream directly, and climbed up from the bed with a snap, almost falling out of the bed.
Fortunately it was a dream,
Leonard reached out and touched his neck, which was still there, with lingering fear in his eyes, looking around with fear in his eyes. Fortunately, Klein did not come out of the dream with him.
Thinking of the content of the dream just now, Leonard shuddered violently. It was too scary. It was the first time he knew that Klein, after his death, could be so scary. Especially those empty eyes without eyeballs, and the bloody mouth that was broken all the way to the back of his earlobe. After sitting on the bed for a while, Leonard gradually recovered from the horrible dream just now. He got up from the bed, lit the candle, came to the table, poured himself a glass of cold boiled water, and drank 4 or 5 glasses before he completely recovered. Leonard, who felt his back was wet, smiled bitterly and said, Klein, why is your dream so scary? If you scare me to death, who will help you take care of your brother and sister? He took a set of dry clothes and went to the bathroom. When he was soaking in the warm water comfortably, he slowly exhaled, and his handsome brows were furrowed. It has been several months since Klein died. This is the first time he has dreamed for him, and it is for his relatives. Have they encountered any trouble recently? The more Leonard thought about it, the more scared he became. He had been busy with the Red Gloves team dealing with various things during this period, and he really didn't pay attention to the situation of Benson and Melissa. In addition, the situation in Backland has gradually become chaotic during this period, and it is hard to guarantee that the two ordinary people will not encounter any danger. Is this the reason why Klein came to him in his dream? If they really have an accident, how can he explain to Klein? Leonard looked up at the bathroom window. Outside the window, there was already a faint light of the early morning. Later, he would go to Benson and Melissa's residence, and at the same time instruct the nearby police station to protect them. That's not right. Why did Klein come to me in my dream after his death? Leonard suddenly realized that in the extraordinary world, dreaming was itself very abnormal. It should be said that only living people have the ability to dream. People are already dead, and even the spirit is not left. How can they still have the ability to complete the dream? And this place is near St. Samuel's Church. Even if there are things like dead souls, they will be completely purified by the priests of the church. Klein died in the sea again. He traveled thousands of miles across the sea to Backland to find him in his dream? When Klein was still alive, he was not so powerful, right? Leonard thought about it for a long time, but with his limited extraordinary knowledge, he still couldn't figure it out. He only knew that this dream was very real, as if it really happened, especially the last sentence, "Help me take care of Benson and Melissa." It was like a spell, deeply imprinted in his mind, and he could never forget it. Klein, you are still in such trouble after death. Leonard smiled bitterly. Since you still remember me as your friend, I won't bother you about the dream this time. Just don't be so scary next time. After taking a bath and changing clothes, Leonard saw that it was still a little early, so he returned to bed again and began to call the old man in his heart. This time, the dream incident, maybe the old man can give him an answer. Dream? How can I know what you encounter in your dream? I am not interested in peeping into your messy dream. The old man's disdainful voice sounded. But I always feel that this dream is too real. How should I put it? Do you think Klein's undead spirit really returned to Backland from the sea? Hee. The undead spirits near St. Samuel Church have been sleeping deep underground for a long time. Can they come to you? Leonard sighed and said, I think so too, but I just think this dream is unusual. After a while, the old man just uttered the word fate. Is dreaming a kind of destiny? Leonard was even more puzzled. The old man chuckled and did not explain the meaning of the word destiny. Instead, he said, in the extraordinary world, the dead can speak. It is normal to dream. Even if they come back to life, it is not something worth making a fuss about. Alas, I also hope that Klein is still alive. I said that you are very lucky. Maybe your wish will come true. Wish come true? The image of Klein's tragic death in the dream immediately appeared in Leonard's mind. He refused repeatedly, saying, I don't want this kind of wish to come true. This time the old man did not answer Leonard again, but sighed at the end, as if he was sighing about something. Leonard sat on the bed alone, unable to sleep until more than 6 in the morning. He simply tidied his hair, left the room, stopped a carriage, and rushed to the South Bridge district, Klein's former home. When Klein died, the church paid to buy the house so that Benson and Melissa could live here in peace, and also gave a death pension. Knock, knock, knock. Leonard knocked on the door, and Benson opened it after a while. Benson, who had not much expression, had a more lively look on his face at this moment. Excuse me. Leonard walked into the house. This was his second visit. Last time, he came here in person to inform Benson and Melissa about Klein's death. What's the matter? Benson poured Leonard a cup of hot tea and said straight to the point. I have to go to work later, so I don't have time to talk too long. Leonard looked around the house and didn't find anything different. He retracted his gaze and smiled. I just want to see if you need any help in your life. No, we are fine, really fine. Benson said, but his eyes looked at a photo frame placed in the center of the living room. It was a photo of Klein, him, and Melissa during the Chinese New Year. It's like this, I dreamed that Klein came to me last night, and he asked me to take good care of you. Leonard still chose to say it. Benson's eyes suddenly turned red, and even Melissa, who was eavesdropping in the inner room, opened the door and walked out. Klein, did he really come to you in your dream? Melissa sat on the sofa opposite Leonard with Benson in disbelief.
her eyes slightly red. Yeah. Leonard nodded. Benson lowered his head in silence and did not speak. Melissa reached out to wipe the tears from the corners of his eyes and asked carefully, "Is he okay?" "He is fine. He asked you to take care of yourself and not be too sad because of his departure." Leonard pulled the corner of his mouth slightly after saying that. He did not dare to describe the miserable situation in Klein's dream, which was equivalent to stabbing Benson and Melissa in the heart. "We will be fine and will live well forever," Benson said in a heavy tone. After a long time, Benson suggested, "I miss him a little. Do you want to go with us to see him?" "Okay." Leonard agreed to this matter. After last night's dream, he also wanted to visit Klein's grave. After tidying up a bit, Leonard and the other two closed the door, went downstairs, and hailed a car to the cemetery where Klein died. While waiting for the car, Leonard caught a glimpse of a familiar figure on the street side of a restaurant. It was not until he got on the carriage and passed the restaurant that he saw clearly that the man was the one he and Hester met at the Brave Bar that night. The carriage quickly passed by the window. Through the glass, Klein looked at the direction where the carriage was leaving, retracted his gaze, and calmly tasted today's breakfast. Everything was fine. As the day of George III's national speech gradually approached, Backlund's chaotic situation suddenly quieted down. Everything was quiet, and the last 3 days passed without any waves. It was just past midnight on this day, and the starry sky was shining brightly, but Backlund once again set off a huge wave of chaos. There were people everywhere in Backlund disrupting the situation. From small things like setting fire to big things like shooting people in the street, or suddenly holding some evil sacrificial ceremony, or someone being so bold as to assassinate important officials and dignitaries of the Kingdom of Lowen. In this case, the 3 major churches only sent a small number of personnel to maintain a certain order, and more manpower and material resources were watching the movements of the Lowen royal family. Asta stood silently on the balcony, watching the chaos and madness of Backlund tonight. When this night is over, George III will come out of his palace, and then walk onto the podium he had already arranged, and give his speech to the people of the Kingdom of Lowen, a speech about a full-scale declaration of war. Perhaps knowing what Asta wanted to do, Sharon came back to help him take care of Ajara. At this moment, Ajara was lying comfortably in her arms, tasting the delicious dried fish. "How can you just wait on such a night?" Asta retracted his gaze, came to the small table next to Sharon and sat down, and then asked the maids who had not yet slept to prepare some wine and food. "You have a lot of free time." Sharon was a little confused about Asta's thoughts. Asta smiled and said, "You don't think I want to assassinate George III in the street, do you?" Sharon just looked at him quietly, and the meaning was very clear. If it were him, he might really do such a risky and bold behavior. "Alas, how could you think I was so stupid? Assassination is what Azishara does." Meow. Azishara, who was named, made a dissatisfied cry. "I have a feeling that you will do something." Sharon glanced at the chaotic events happening in the distance. "Is this what you expect?" "Creating chaos and guiding chaos are indeed what I need to play." "You are making great progress." Sharon sincerely admires Haster's improvement and strength. At this rate, Hasta will soon surpass her. Perhaps, he has already surpassed her in many other aspects. Hasta sighed. "This is not a good thing. Promoting too fast is definitely not a good thing. For details, please refer to Klein. He has always been worried that he will take the same path as Klein. So he is still thinking about whether to cross the sequence when promoting to sequence 4, whether to choose the judgment path or the extraordinary path left by the Yellow King, or the star path. He is afraid that if he is not careful, he will be promoted one after another, from sequence 4 to sequence 0, and then a certain existence will wake up in his body." Sharon said nothing. She agreed with Asta's statement. This was not a good thing. The night passed quickly. No matter how chaotic the night was, the sun would rise as usual. When George III's carriage came out of the open palace gate, the chaos had been suppressed by order. People on both sides of the street gathered and watched George III go to the prepared podium under the solemn and orderly guard of honor. The nobles and ministers of the Kingdom of Lowen had already been waiting there to listen to George III's speech. As an earl, Asta was also among the nobles. He sat on both sides of the podium with other nobles, watching George III get off the carriage and walk step by step. Unlike other nobles, they wanted to witness how George III brought the kingdom of Lowen to the top. Hasta wanted to witness with their own eyes how George III went to destruction step by step. Yes, Hasta had no intention of destroying George III's mausoleum himself from the beginning. They targeted 4 mausoleums in total, of which Mr. Fool took 2, and the remaining 2 mausoleums were given to Bernadette and Madame Lisa. If Klein had not come to seek cooperation, Hasta would have sent the star container here, and even Gray Carey and Sharon's teacher could have taken action, and could have asked Ouroboros to help participate in this matter, and could even sit in the Hall of Stars and use the authority of divine revelation to make the people of the witch cult turn against him. He had too many choices, and he didn't need to take risks himself. He only needed to sit in the audience and wait for how George III fell. It's time to start your performance, Mr. Fool. Hasta looked at George III, who was already standing in front of the microphone and ready to start his speech, and whispered silently in his heart. Ladies and sir, I am your emperor, the ruler of the Lowen Kingdom and the Rost Islands, George Augustus III. For a long time, the Fuzak people have been trying to invade our homeland. For this, our ancestors and relatives paid the price with blood, resisting their invasion time and time again from our homeland. Last year they launched another war. How many young soldiers died under their butcher knives, and how many families lost their favorite relatives in the war. They even secretly sent people to assassinate Duke Negan and bring trouble to Backland. They used cruel methods and despicable actions to act wantonly in our country. We have had enough of the pain of being invaded. We should pick up the weapons in our hands and start fighting back, crush their invading claws, and let them know that the people of the Kingdom of Lowen will hold weapons and insert them into their chests, break their hearts. West District, Memorial Day Square. Audrey stood near the high platform with her father, mother, and brother, looking at the king who was wearing a grand dress and giving a passionate speech. Ever since she learned about the death of the god of war, Audrey gradually lost her respect for the gods and royal power, and their noble aura was gradually fading and disappearing. After experiencing the death of the spiritual dragon in the dream, she seemed to have seen through life's birth, old age, illness and death, and she gradually lost the emotions, moods, and interests that ordinary girls should have. Instead, it is like an outsider watching the people on the stage performing, looking down, as if they are in 2 different worlds. Together with the affection between her parents and relatives, the importance in her heart is also constantly fading. This change made her panic. She had only entered the extraordinary world for a few years, so how could she have the mentality of an old person who could see through the world? Audrey moved her eyes away from George III, who was delivering a passionate speech, and glanced at Mr. Hasta, who was standing on the opposite side. I found that he was listening with great interest, but with a smile on his lips, as if he was enjoying a beautiful stage play. After watching for a while, Hasta also looked over. Audrey looked at him calmly for a few seconds, and then naturally looked away. Susie didn't follow. Is she still asleep? Hasta glanced around and did not notice the presence of Susie behind Audrey. For an audience, what happened today will definitely help their digestion. While Hasta was thinking, George III, the old-fashioned and serious man with 2 mustache, ended the description of the first stage and solemnly said, "Let us mourn here for our heroes, ladies and gentlemen, and repeat in your hearts. In the name of Emperor George III, may the departed heroes find peace, and may they become eternal in the kingdom of the gods in which they believe." This sentence carried an irresistible majesty that made all the listeners, including Audrey, lower their heads involuntarily, clasped their hands, and silently recited, "In the name of Emperor George III, may the dead heroes find peace, may they become eternal in the kingdom of gods in which they believe." In the name of Emperor George III. At the outermost edge of Memorial Day Square, Klein, wearing a black woolen coat and an ordinary face, began praying at the same time as the people around him, and his behavior was normal. The 3-minute silence made Klein suspicious. George III, who is attracting much attention, is giving a speech here. How should he take the magic potion? After the speech, find a reason to leave, and then enter the mausoleum to start promotion. He once asked Will about the precautions required in the Black Emperor's promotion ceremony. In the name of Emperor George III, should be the core of the entire Black Emperor promotion ceremony. If you want to increase the success rate, it must be done at this time, or within the 2 or 3 minutes of ending the silence. But the George III in front of him seemed to have no intention of leaving the podium.
At this moment, Klein's palm suddenly became warm, which was Bernadette's action signal.
This means that George III has begun taking magic potion to prepare for promotion. Klein took another look at George III on the podium. He was leading by example and observing a pious moment of silence without making any unnecessary movements. It is hard to imagine that the fake George III in front of him could easily escape the attention of the three major church personnel and wait for an opportunity to become a god under their noses.
How terrible. Klein did not hesitate and quietly blended in with the crowd and left.
He was originally on the outermost side of the crowd, and the people behind him kept coming to join in the fun. He left easily and headed outside the mausoleum he chose. After waiting for a while, Mr. Azik opened the Spiritual World channel and appeared here. Klein, who had not seen Mr. Azik for a long time, originally wanted to have a casual chat with Mr. Azik. But time was urgent now, especially since Bernadette had already made a violent noise in another tomb in the distance. Mr. Azik, please excuse me, Klein bowed deeply. If it hadn't been for his invitation, Mr. Azik wouldn't have needed to participate in this matter and take unnecessary risks.
You are my student, and teachers should provide their students with the help they can.
Azik spoke with a smile, took the blood from Klein's hand that broke the seal of the mausoleum, stretched out his right index finger, and quickly sketched a symbol in the void.
As Mr. Azik moved his fingertips, drops of blood like fine rubies came out and solidified in midair.
Soon, complex symbols composed of overlapping doors appeared in midair. They trembled slightly, not knowing where they resonated. In the blink of an eye, this bloody symbol expanded into an illusory translucent door, through which a huge mausoleum made of black boulders could be seen. Let's go. Azik stepped through the illusory translucent door and entered the mausoleum. Klein nodded and followed closely behind Mr. Azik. Mr. Azik was the main force today and he was just helping out a little bit. But if he were allowed to sneak into the depths of the mausoleum, he would still be able to cause chaos and destroy the mausoleum as much as possible. Oh, I've been guarding against you for a long time. When Azik and Klein entered the mausoleum, Grove Augustus, Prince of Sonia of the Lowen Kingdom, received the signal and quickly appeared in front of Azik. He has a square face, a white hairband on his head, and two slightly raised beards around his mouth. This seems to be a genetic trait of the Augustus family. George III also had two raised mustaches. Grove Augustus, Judgment Pathway Sequence 3 Chaos Hunter. Facing such an opponent, Azik didn't pay too much attention.
Although he has not fully recovered his previous strength, it is not difficult to hold down a Sequence 3 player. Without waiting for Mr. Azik to speak, Klein left the battlefield and went deeper into the mausoleum.
Being able to send a Sequence 3 guard here is already the strongest guardian of this mausoleum. The strongest people inside are Sequence 5 and Sequence 4 at most. He holds many trump cards, which are enough to guarantee his life. Not to mention, Mr. Azik still said in his heart, "When you are in danger, remember to call for help, I still have some strength left." On the other side, Bernadette, who was already a Sequence 2, held the powerful sealed object left by Russell, and faced William I, who had been secretly protecting the Lowen Kingdom. The judgment was passed by the hand of the Sequence 1 order.
I didn't expect that a person like you could live to this day and allow future generations to step on you and rise to power.
Bernadette looked at the ancestor of the Augustus family and the founder of the Lowen Kingdom printed in the center of the 10 gold pounds, and felt emotional.
This is an old antique who was active in the era of the gods. He was loyal to the First Empire of Solomon and later to the United Empire of Tudor Trunsoest. During the War of the Four Emperors after the death of the Knight Emperor, he, with the support of the Seven Gods, took away the Hand of Order trait left by the Knight Emperor, promoted him to Sequence 1, and then destroyed the Knight Emperor's Trunsoest family in one fell swoop. The Kingdom of Lowen has been established to this day. There had been rumors for a long time that he had fallen. Unexpectedly, he was still alive, and he was sent here to resist him today. I once met your father. He was a man who was good at creating miracles. Unfortunately, he has fallen. He can be regarded as a jealous genius. William I said lightly. Bernadette, you just leave. I can treat you as today's nothing happened. Ha, you want to rely on your old age to show off? Bernadette just sneered. You can make a wish to me, and I can help you stuff this annoying old thing into a latrine, or let his body split inch by inch, rot and pus,
and undergo all kinds of torture. The shadow of the genie of the lantern emerged from the wishing lamp. His majestic posture and stern and disdainful eyes made William I's calm expression waver, and there was no trace of shock in his eyes. He actually felt an extremely obvious personal suppression. He has reached the hand of order in sequence 1. When no true god appears in the judgment pathway, unless it is the old god of outer gods outside the starry sky, there is no other existence in the same path that can make him feel suppressed. The son of chaos who once ruled the kingdom of disorder. William I recognized the origin of the jinn. He had seen the blasphemy tablet and knew that the kingdom of disorder had been the source of the sons of chaos. The jinn who originally wanted to pretend to be inscrutable for a while, but when he heard the word Zung, he was so angry that he shouted for Bernadette to beat this mean-mouthed old guy to death. If you can't speak, shut up. What does it mean to have once been in charge of a country of disorder? That is the source of it that belongs to him. The future will also belong to him, and no one can take it away from him. Not only that, he also wants to go to the Lord of Mysteries to settle accounts and let him taste the taste of being sealed for endless years. He is more suitable than himself to be made into a magical lamp for making wishes. Bernadette was already used to the sudden anger of the genie, but William I's face was stiff for a while, and there was a little more surprise in his eyes. This speech and behavior was seriously inconsistent with the image of the outer god in his heart. Did the Lord of Mystery seal half of the Son of Chaos in the wishing lamp, and tear his wisdom in half? After a short silence, the genie sneered. You dare to look down on me with a sequence 1. Today, I will leave you here, and let this mausoleum become your grave. After the genie finished speaking, he glanced at Bernadette. Today I will do my best to help you solve the problem. Bernadette nodded, and a fairy tale kingdom appeared around her to trap William I in front of her. The genie was also trying her best to stimulate her status as an outer god in the past. Even if he was sealed by the wishing lamp, at such a close distance, coupled with Bernadette's indulgence, it was enough to suppress William I who was in the judgment path. At least, he can only exert 40% to 50% of his strength. Regarding George III's promotion to the Black Emperor, he and the stars have the same will. Want to become the Black Emperor? Dream on. Once George III becomes the Black Emperor, he will definitely pay attention to his country of disorder. Humph, this is a way to death. With the full help of the lamp god, Bernadette suppressed William I of sequence 1. She separated an incarnation and went to destroy the mausoleum of George III. William I's face changed slightly, but he was unable to stop it. Soon, the mausoleum that wasted a lot of manpower and material resources began to collapse. In the number 1 ruins outside Backland, in the dark and majestic secret mausoleum, the real George III has put on the black crown and taken the magic potion. His body began to transform towards the shadow of order. In a strange state, it expanded and extended, as if he was gradually leaving the earth and flying towards the sky. When he flew to the middle of the air, he looked down at the black ocean covered by the shadow of order below. The 9 mausoleums were the 9 real islands in the Black Ocean. The people chanted, in the name of Emperor George III, in silence. There were countless densely packed lighthouses, anchoring him, the king of the kingdom of Loan and the ruler of the Rossday Islands, so that he would not be out of touch with reality and become part of the shadow of order. In this process, George III's thoughts began to diverge, recalling the various calculations he had made along the way. His heart was full of pride and ambition. He had a big heart. In order to ensure the smooth progress of today's promotion ceremony, he used the power that could be used by all parties. The witch cult, Zeratu of the Secret Society, members of the Dusk Hermit Society, and Mr. Men, who only he knew. He wanted to become a god, to become the new Black Emperor. Now, he was getting closer and closer to this goal. At this moment, an island transformed from a mausoleum suddenly began to shake, then broke apart continuously, and finally shattered in the shadow of order. As a mausoleum collapsed, the shadow of order began to grow and spread, and other islands were affected and began to shake violently, and cracks appeared in the whole world. Ah! George III's face twisted, and he let out a painful and suppressed roar. He felt that a piece of his soul was torn apart. The order's shadow surged like a tide, trying to destroy the only 8 islands he had left, and then pull him down from the sky and devour him completely.
But the bright starry sky was right in front of him, and he would never give up halfway. George III tried hard to suppress the pain of his soul splitting, and digested the magic potion he swallowed with all his strength. With the help of the lighthouses formed by the other 8 islands and the people, he stabilized his state and rushed towards the Sequence 0 Black Emperor with all his strength. If he only persisted for another 2 or 3 minutes, he would be able to leave the earth, reach the starry sky, and become a new god. But before long, George III saw that another island in the ocean of order shadow had changed. That island did not split, but directly shook for a while and got out of his control. Not only did it not help him anchor his own state, but on the contrary, it suddenly crashed into other islands. Damn it! What on earth are those people doing? They actually let people destroy his mausoleum one after another. In addition to the hidden combat power of the royal family, he also invited the assistance of the witch cult, the secret order, and the Twilight Hermits to defend the mausoleum with all their strength, which should be foolproof. A bunch of trash. George III was angry and helpless. Now he had no way to retreat and could only move forward step by step. In the Memorial Day Square, Hasta, who was mourning for George III for 3 minutes, felt the increasingly chaotic breath of Backlund and clearly felt that the magic potion of the Chaos Mentor in his body was being digested. He glanced at the fake George III who was trembling slightly but still trying to maintain himself. He closed his eyes and quietly came to the Hall of Stars. He stretched out his hand and showed the scenes that Bernadette and Lady Lisa were facing on the Hall of Stars. With the full help of the lamp god, Bernadette steadily suppressed the opponent. After successfully destroying a mausoleum, she began to shift the battlefield and lead the battlefield to another mausoleum. The aftermath of the battle continued to destroy this new mausoleum. If there hadn't been someone protecting this mausoleum, Bernadette would have successfully destroyed the second mausoleum. Compared to the commotion caused by Bernadette, Madame Lisa's side was much quieter. In order to deal with George III, Lady Lisa had already hid in the mausoleum. Her life-stealing ability directly took over the fate of the guardian of this mausoleum and stayed here as him. Now she wants to steal the tomb of George III, and she succeeded. This situation is more serious than directly destroying this mausoleum. Through the connection between this mausoleum and George III, Lady Lisa can indirectly influence several other mausoleums, and even directly intervene in the promotion of George III. But such behavior is too dangerous and can easily lead to fire. Mrs. Lisa did not choose to intervene directly. Instead, she used this mausoleum to constantly collide with other mausoleums. This extraordinary path left by the King in Yellow is truly terrifying. Fortunately, Lady Lisa is only Sequence 2. If it were Sequence 1, then Lady Lisa would probably want to directly steal the identity of George III and use his identity to become a god. Seeing that they were progressing smoothly, Hester turned to overlook Memorial Day Square below, with a superior attitude, looking at George III who was hiding deep in the mausoleum and working hard to be promoted to Black Emperor. At this moment, George III's condition was obviously not right. The collapse of the 2 mausoleums seriously affected his condition. His anchor is unstable and his foundation is being undermined. Several other mausoleums experienced varying degrees of shaking and turmoil. The people secretly targeting George III this time were not only the Stars and the Fool, but also spies from the Fozzic Empire and members of the Church of the God of War. George III wanted to take this opportunity to declare all-out war on the Fozzic Empire. In order to gain some breathing space, the Church of God of War could only make a desperate move. If it drags on any longer, the Church of the God of War will take the shape of the Goddess of the Night. Some devout believers of the God of War Church will do anything for the faith in their hearts. Their strength is not good, but they still have the ability to create chaos and attract the attention of the Loan military and the Three Gods Church. I don't know what the situation is like with Mr. Fool. Hester whispered, then looked towards the stars above. His main target was Adam, wanting to see what he would do on the day George III became a god. But Adam in the picture just stayed in the seaside church and had no plans to go out, as if he didn't care at all whether George III could succeed. Also, to him, it doesn't matter whether George III succeeds or fails. The tide of war is already surging, and there is no need for him to secretly fuel it. If George III falls, the kingdom of Loan will experience a civil strife, which will give the Fozzic Empire a short respite. If George III succeeds, the Loan kingdom will declare full war on Fozzic.
Both will start a war, the only difference is sooner or later. If he were Adam, he would focus on 008. Unfortunately, I will not hand over 008 to him easily. After watching for a while, Hasta looked down at George III below and made a judgment in the name of the stars. George III's promotion to Black Emperor today must fail. Hasta did not stay in the Hall of Stars for long, and took advantage of the 3 minutes of silence to leave the Hall of Stars and return to the real world. When the 3 minutes of silence ended, George III on the podium was about to continue saying something, but his body shook violently. In full view of the public, the serious and old-fashioned George III, with his 2 mustaches, exploded with a bang. His flesh and blood turned into fireworks, spraying into the air, gorgeous and colorful. Under everyone's shocked and dazed eyes, the ruler of the Kingdom of Loan and the Rossday Islands, Emperor George III, exploded like a ball of blood. The members of the royal guards closest to him, whose silver-white armor and faces not protected by armor, were stained with the blood that exploded, and they collapsed to the ground in fear. Emperor George III is dead. He died inexplicably under the gaze of everyone. Panic and disorder began to spread. Audrey was closer to George III's podium. She could clearly see how George III's body was torn apart bit by bit and how the blood plasma in his body exploded. For some reason, at this moment of shock and panic, when everyone's eyes were focused on George III, she subconsciously looked at Mr. Hasta opposite. He was also looking at George III, but there was no expression of shock and panic on his face, and even a deep smile could be seen in his eyes. Could it be that Mr. Hasta had known that King George III would fall today, so he was not shocked at all? Audrey didn't have time to think or look. Earl Hall, who was standing beside her, had a sullen face and quickly ordered Hibbert and Alfred to protect her and Countess Hall and leave here. Ah! It was unknown which noble lady screamed in panic, which instantly detonated the accumulated panic. Not only were the royal family members panicking like headless flies, but even the royal guards who were guarding around didn't know what to do now. They wanted to protect the body of George III, but the explosion was so thorough that not even a complete bone was left. In this moment of fear, confusion and panic, Audrey gradually calmed down. She switched to the audience's perspective, watching everything with cold eyes, and at the same time feeling all kinds of complex emotions coming from all directions. Grief, sadness, panic, fear, confusion, and even secret joy and happiness. The various emotions burst out by the onlookers at this moment instantly filled the entire Memorial Day square, forming an ocean of souls. And she, Audrey Hall, is an island floating on the ocean of the soul. She is still watching the magnificent waves of this ocean of the soul as a bystander, even the small splashes of waves are not missed. The psychiatrist potion in her body was completely digested at a visible speed. An inexplicable enlightenment filled her mind, as if a switch was turned on, making her eyes look at the world in front of her more thorough and indifferent. Audrey noticed the changes in herself, and couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Is this also considered eating human blood buns? Or should I say thank you King George III for his dying gift? When Audrey was sent away from here, she glanced at the place opposite Mr. Hasta. At this moment, Mr. Hasta also watched everything in front of him with an absolutely calm and indifferent attitude. But he is different from himself. He sees the complex emotions and human hearts in people's hearts, while he sees the chaotic and disordered behavior of the crowd. As if he had noticed her spying, Mr. Hasta cast a look at her, with encouragement in his eyes, and a sense of companionship as a bystander. Mr. Hasta, what kind of real face do you have under that mask? Audrey whispered in her heart, and soon, she and her mother, including other panicked noble ladies, were sent to a safe place for protection. It turns out that chaos also has a unique beauty. Hasta looked at the panicked crowds everywhere in his vision, from royal members to ordinary people. At this moment, they took off their identities and showed their most helpless side in a naked posture. Order, at this moment, became unbalanced and blank. Just like the characters in a beautiful painting, when someone took a torch to burn the painting, they suddenly had their own lives in the painting, began to run around, and left their original position, forming a chaotic beauty. Hasta silently felt and tasted this chaotic and disordered meal, and the magic potion of the Chaos Mentor in his body was also digesting faster. At this time, he truly understood what kind of legacy the ancient sun god left when he fell. Only those who witnessed and participated in the fall of the ancient sun god could be promoted to gods in a short period of time. Because witnessing itself is a huge wealth. The fall of George III was like this, not to mention the fall of the ancient sun god. After a brief chaos, the royal family members and the nobles began to stabilize the order on the scene, and the outermost soldiers completely surrounded the entire Memorial Day Square. This was to find out the possible assassins who assassinated George III. The church leaders who knew some inside information allowed this search because the church and the kingdom of Lowen needed a scapegoat. Otherwise, the anger and doubts of the people would easily destroy the order that was built with great difficulty. Feeling the disappearance of the chaos, Hasta gently closed his eyes and entered the Hall of Stars again. He wanted to make sure whether George III had fallen completely. When reading the original work, he always felt that George III fell too easily. Even if he failed to be promoted to the Black Emperor, George III was still a Sequence 1 and possessed 3 Sequence 1 Beander characteristics and uniqueness. Such an existence is stronger than Adam and Amen at this stage, and is about the same as Mr. Men back then. Mr. Men can still persist in resisting the pollution from the fallen Mother Goddess, but George III completely perished and died because of the failure of promotion? In this time, there is also the butterfly effect brought by himself, which makes George III's promotion to the Black Emperor come earlier. Maybe there will be some new changes. When Hasta looked into the depths of the Black Mausoleum, George III's body did explode, but the flesh and blood were strangely suspended in the air, trying to piece together a face of George III. Behind that face, there is a translucent and strange portal being generated. Not dead yet. What is that portal? When Hasta wanted to zoom in and see more clearly, a tremor and panic suddenly surged in his mind. This is a reminder from the spirit. He quickly stopped thinking about it and frowned slightly. George III is in this state, it is impossible to leave him alone. Who knows where the portal leads to? Could it be Mr. Men, fallen Mother Goddess? Hasta instantly became alert. The only existence that could make him feel troubled and terrified across the Hall of Stars was something like the fallen Mother Goddess. Moreover, during this period, the fallen Mother Goddess had been keeping her followers active in Backland. Maybe she could really get in touch with George III. The blood and conditions that Mr. Men needed to break the seal could be gathered quickly with the help of George III. George III must not be allowed to cooperate with the fallen Mother Goddess. George III, as a qualified emperor, you should be completely dead. On the outskirts of Backland, deep in ruins number 1, George III, who failed to be promoted, had lost the possibility of impacting the Black Emperor. His body was also being devoured by the shadow of order because of his failed promotion. But he didn't want his long-term forbearance and dormancy to become a joke. So at the last moment of his life, he tried his best to outline a portal that could communicate with Mr. Men. Not long ago, someone found him and said that he could help him and introduced Mr. Men to him. He had heard his ancestor William I mention this legendary figure. At the beginning, he was called the closest to the gods. Even Adam, Amen, Medici and other beings had to rank behind him. But later, something happened to him and he suddenly disappeared. There were rumors that he was preparing for the ceremony of promotion to godhood, and there were also rumors that he was sealed by the goddess of night and other true gods. For such a legendary figure, he was cautious and only communicated with the other party through the seal once. Mr. Men was indeed sealed by the goddess of night and other true gods. If he helped him to unseal, he could be promoted to a true god. But he was not so stupid as to easily believe that Mr. Men would help him break the seal. But Mr. Men did not care too much, just mentioned it and did not say anything else. Instead, he said that his promotion to the Black Emperor this time would definitely fail, because there was a mysterious existence that would not allow him to become a god, and would definitely let his believers stop and destroy it. At first, he did not believe what Mr. Men said. Later, someone continued to spread news that was unfavorable to the Lowen royal family in secret, targeting him as the king, which made him alert and worried. But he still did not contact Mr. Men. This old guy who had lived for who knows how many years would only take the opportunity to harm him and would never really help him. Until he accepted the review from the Three Gods Church, he felt more and more uneasy. Bernadette could accurately spread the day when he wanted to be promoted to the Black Emperor. This was enough to prove that there was someone who did not want him to be promoted smoothly and was trying to kill him. So,
Out of uneasiness and curiosity, he contacted Mr. Men again. He wanted to know which mysterious existence did not want him to become a god. The stars and the fool. This was the answer Mr. Men finally gave him: stars and fools. These are the two most talked about mysterious beings in the extraordinary world recently, the stars believers of the stars, and the tarot club of the fools. It is rumored that they are as powerful as the 7 true gods, so the 7 gods church adopts a conciliatory policy when facing their believers. In addition to trying to collect their intelligence, they do not forcibly arrest their believers. Bernadette is a believer of the stars, so it is normal for her to attract the malice of the stars, but this fool, he does not remember offending the other party, and he did not even make things difficult for his believers. But they worked together to prevent him from becoming a god? Mr. Men did not give an answer to this question, but left the last rune, saying that when he failed to be promoted, he could try to make a final desperate attempt. Now, he has reached a desperate moment. The royal family members, the witch cult, and the dusk hermits have not appeared here. He can only try to follow Mr. Men's guidance and make the last gamble of his life. As the illusory portal drawn with his blood gradually solidified, he could clearly sense that behind the portal, there was a terrifying breath awakening. That breath made him feel palpitations. This was definitely a true god-level existence, or even more. Mr. Men. No, before George III could say anything, the blood and flesh that he had barely pieced together were being swallowed by the portal behind him. This was not a portal that could be used for communication, but a sacrificial door, and he, George III, the ruler of the Kingdom of Loan, was the chosen involuntary sacrifice. But he was no longer able to struggle. The shadow of order was speeding up to swallow his last traces in this world. Under the double attack, the face made of blood and flesh was completely blown up. The terrifying fluctuations directly destroyed this mausoleum, allowing the secrets hidden in the black mausoleum to be completely exposed under the starry sky. The summoned gate suddenly increased in size by hundreds of times, completely covering the entire broken mausoleum, and the terrifying breath faintly emanated from the gate. At the initial crack in the barrier, except for the Lord of Storms and the Goddess of Night who closed the gate of the Kingdom of God, the other 4 gods cast their eyes down at this time. Mr. Men, mixed with the breath of the fallen Mother Goddess, actually appeared on the outskirts of Backland. And this breath is getting stronger and stronger. It is the breath that is about to break the seal. Mr. Men's escape means the coming of the fallen Mother Goddess. This is absolutely not allowed. Just when they wanted to take action and hold a divine descent. A huge ball of light, like a sun, has smashed straight towards the huge door. There are other beings taking action. They moved their eyes upwards and saw stars twinkling in the starry sky. That huge ball of light came from outside the starry sky. Eternal blazing sun recognized this breath. It was the breath of the superstar Lord. It was him who cooperated with the stars to take action. As the sun fell, the portal that had not yet been completely stabilized was purified and melted with a loud bang. A large area on the outskirts of Backland was razed to the ground. In that dazzling light, a finger that tried to force its way out had a black eyeball on the tip of the finger, which was completely burned to ashes with hatred and unwillingness. They seemed to hear a resentful curse from the depths of the portal. Is it over? The other 3 gods breathed a sigh of relief, while the eternal sun frowned slightly. The more the superstar overlord helped the stars, the more the stars would stand on the side of the superstar overlord in the future. In this case, he would face greater danger. Sure enough, another ball of light descended from the starry sky, like a blazing sun, and hit the kingdom of God that the eternal sun had recently repaired very accurately and quickly. Stars! The eternal sun roared angrily. The other 3 gods, standing in their respective kingdoms, looked at the eternal sun kingdom that had once again turned into ruins and sighed. According to the speed of cooperation between the superstar overlord and the stars, the eternal sun could not last long. On the one hand, he had to compete with the superstar lord for the authority of the sun, and on the other hand, his kingdom of God was constantly under attack and was crumbling. Under such circumstances, the eternal blazing sun had absolutely no chance of winning. The God of knowledge and wisdom looked at the storm lord who had closed the door of the kingdom of God with deep eyes, and he felt that his chance was coming. Once the eternal blazing sun lost in the power struggle with the superstar lord, in order to prevent the superstar lord, the outer god, from mastering the authority of the sun in the past, the other true gods would definitely let him and the Storm Lord share the authority of the eternal blazing sun first. For some reason, the Storm Lord had provoked the high-dimensional Overlooker, and was targeted everywhere, and was deeply injured. Only his own state was the most perfect. This was enough to tilt the balance of other true gods to his side. But now, he also had to close the door of the kingdom of God to avoid being involved in unnecessary troubles. The huge explosion outside Backland formed a huge airwave, destroying a large area of houses in the outer circle of Backland. The chaos began to spread further, but soon, the Lowen royal family pushed forward George III's heir, the eldest prince, Covington Augustus, and defined all the chaos that happened today as a terrorist attack from the Faesac Empire. And used this as an excuse to declare a full-scale war on the Faesac Empire. The personnel of the three major churches also stood up to support Covington Augustus and elected him as the next king of the Lowen kingdom. Asta and Klein did not participate in these things, and quietly hid their merits and fame. In the southern part of the bridge, Klein had just sent away the messenger lady in the rented room. This time, he asked the messenger lady to help destroy the mausoleum and prevent George III from becoming a god, and he needed to pay 10,000 gold coins for this. Compared with the risk taken by the messenger lady, this price was already very cheap. But for the poor and needy Mr. Fool, this was a heavy bill. Your messenger is not simple, but fortunately he has no ill will towards you. Mr. Azek appeared in Klein's room after the messenger lady left. The messenger lady is a very good person and has helped me many times. Klein nodded. Azek looked at Klein deeply. You should know that providing corresponding help in the extraordinary world requires an equivalent return. The transaction between Miss Messenger and me has always been an equal transaction. Every time I ask her for help, I have to pay a huge amount of gold coins. Gold coins. You should know that this kind of money cannot invite such a person. I hope you know this. Klein nodded silently and sighed in his heart. Who said that money cannot invite big people? Mr. Fool, online rental. One help only costs 5,000 gold coins. The price is fair, first come first served. Klein set his price half lower than Miss Messenger. But he just thought about it, and soon led the topic to the big explosion outside Backland today. This explosion collapsed a large area of houses in the outer circle of Backland from a long distance. The real situation must be more serious and terrible. And the Three Gods Church is particularly tacit in this matter, blocking the suburbs and not allowing anyone to peek. Let the Lowen royal family claim to the outside that this is to round up the enemies from Fussac. I'm not sure. I guess it must be a true god who took action to wipe out George III's last chance of survival. Azek looked up at the starry sky, with a flash of vigilance in his eyes. George III fell so easily, as if in a dream, Klein sighed. Many people attacked George III today. In addition to Bernadette, there was also a mysterious figure who was difficult to spy on. At the critical moment, he stole the mausoleum that should have belonged to George III, which caused George III to fail to be promoted directly. Klein also deeply agreed with this point. He was also in the mausoleum at that time. Mr. Azek, what do you know about the stars? Azek did not answer, but asked Klein not to think too much about the starry sky. Klein understood that this was Mr. Azek's protection for him, so he changed the topic to a lighter one. Mr. Azek, where do you want to go next? Northern Fussac, where it starts to freeze in September, is very suitable for sea fishing and seal fishing. Do you want to relax with me? No, I still have some things to deal with. Klein shook his head and refused. He still needed to return to the sea and seek opportunities to continue to advance to a higher sequence. Moreover, once he followed Mr. Azek and had someone to rely on, he was afraid that he would never want to go out and take risks again. Sometimes people should relax. Azek saw Klein's complicated mood. I will keep writing to Mr. Azek. I look forward to your letter. It will be one of the few comforts I have on the distant ice and snow. Azek did not stay with Klein for long. He took action to prevent George III from becoming a god. As long as the Lowen royal family was willing, they would definitely find out his identity. After seeing Mr. Azek off, Klein felt much more relaxed. He went to the restaurant along the street to eat as usual. When he saw Leonard rushing over and then hurried upstairs to check on Benson and Melissa, he felt relieved. Tomorrow, he would also leave Backland and return to the sea to be a pirate hunter.
Although the messenger lady would not urge the dead, it was really uncomfortable to be in debt. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.